happy day, good evening, family. How everybody doing? How everybody doing? It's a blessing to be here today. Shabbat Shalom to the 12 tribes. Shabbat Shalom to the 12 tribes. I hope y'all wasn't worried about your brother. I hope y'all wasn't worried about your aunt. You know, if you don't see me for a little while, just know I'm cooking up something. Just know the Most High is cooking up something in me. You know what I mean? You ain't got to worry too hard. You ain't got to worry too tough. Y'all got my email if y'all need to reach out to me for anything on an emergency level anyway. I like to make that apparent to you. You got the website, truejew.org. You can tap in with me on there. I'm going to get all the messages. I hope everybody's doing well. I just wanted to talk to y'all on this Shabbat. Before we begin, let's petition the Most High. Barakatah YAHUWAH Elohenu melech haolam. Waruach HaKodesh Ba'Hashem Yahshua Mashiach. We thank you for this beautiful day. Please continue to guide us and keep us along the way. May the word be brought through us and be edifying and reach the four corners of the world in truth according to your divine will. Ashe, 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 amen. All right, y'all. It was probably gonna get hot. It's probably gonna get hot today. I might have to come up out of this hoodie. You know what? Y'all give me one moment. Let me come out this hoodie real quick. Give me one moment. All right. Okay. So I know it's late. I know y'all probably wasn't expecting me to go live this evening at this time, but it's all good. We still got the West Coast. West Coast about 9:33 right now. East Coast is about 12:33. I know it's a Friday, Gregorian calendar time. So we just tapping in. We tapping in. Hopefully the saints and the elect are at home this evening and are meditating and marinating on the truth, getting a chance to really dig in deeply with what we've been called to do on the Shabbat, which is rest, focus on the Most High, count our blessings, repent, obviously, and continue to move toward the Most High in a very meaningful and special way. Over the past, the course of this week, I've been thinking about the wicked. And that's the title of this live stream. The earth has been given into the hands of the wicked. And I had to really think about that. Who are the wicked for real? Like for real, because our history in this country, we've been called everything under the sun as a people. And I'm talking about so-called Black folks. We've been called everything under the sun. And as I think about the narrative of what has been illustrated pertaining to our people, I had to kind of be reminded. And I'm gonna touch on what I mean by reminded. Walking this walk and learning what I've been called to learn up until this day, I've realized that there's so much that hurts. There's so much that truly hurts. That was kind of the motivation behind the trigger warning video. Although it was quick, the point was to recognize who we are, to recognize who you are as an individual, to recognize the things that upset you, to recognize the things that people say and do in an attempt to deceive you, in an attempt to trick you, in an attempt to get a reaction from you that goes against the walk that you've been called on in the season of your life. And what that means from birth up until the point where you become cognizant of what's actually going on. Thank you, Awakened Goddess. Shabbat Shalom. Yeah, that's what's up. Thank you for the reminder. And the other night I was talking with my Isha, and we was talking about how, well, I brought up that whole term. They took me out my character. They took me out my character. Somebody took you out your character. It made you respond or react in a way that took out your character, right? And I had to really start thinking about that. I was like, you know what? I don't like that. I don't like that term. Took me out my character. You know what I'm saying? And I'm gonna tell you why. Because if I have to say that term took me out my character, right? And that has to do with me cussing somebody out, or me in temper, violently hurting somebody, or losing my cool so much that I begin to get loud and boisterous and start knocking things down and all this type of stuff, right? I was like, if somebody got me out my character, which means that I'm no longer being the cool, calm, and collected person that I want to be every day, then that was a facade. That was false. Me being cool, calm, collected, that was false. That was just the character. And when that trigger was pushed, when that trigger was pulled, when that button was pushed, then my true self came out. The irate, loud, boisterous, angry, easily temperamental person, right? And I was like, it shouldn't be like that. That's why I don't like that they took me out my character. Nah, so the real me is the Tasmanian devil dude. The real me is the guy that punches people out soon as I don't like what they got to say. The real me is the guy that turns up on cats. The real me is the guy who quick to slide on my brother. The real me is the one who quick to mug my brother and get angry and cuss folks out and act irate. That's the real me? Nah, that's not the real me. So when I had to realize that obviously that's not who I want to be every day, well then getting me out my character, the character that I got out of, it shouldn't have to be me getting angry versus me being kind or me being cool headed. Okay. I don't want cool headed and calm and collected to be a mask that I wear every day to fool and trick people into thinking that's how I am. When in reality, all it takes somebody to do is press a button, an emotional button that I haven't conquered yet. And now I'm out of character. I'm no longer the cool, calm, and collected person. Now I'm somebody else, don't nobody know, or the person that the people who press my buttons was expecting me to be. Okay. And it takes emotional wisdom to get to that point. I'm a water baby. I'm a water baby. So for a long time in my life, emotions ruled my thinking. However I felt, that's what I would do as far as a response. You do it to me, I'm doing it to you, and I didn't really think about how, in the moment, what consequences could arise from certain decisions. Now, blessed to the most high, that type of mind frame to give thought to the consequences, it entered into my life what I would say rather early than most. Okay. But still, there was a point, and depending on what it is, it's a point, where the reactionary response um could be something that gets pulled out, right? And so what we have to do, and what I had to do, I'll talk about me, what I had to do was really take note of this. And in taking note of it, I began to, like I said, realize, wait a second, y'all. What is this whole got me out my character thing? I don't like that because that means I'm not being true to myself. It got me out my character, and now the mask is off, and I'm who I've been trying to hide this whole time. Nah, I want to stay calm, cool, and collected because that's what I've graduated to. I want to stay level headed. I want to stay being able to think and see situations through. I have this saying. I have this saying. I'd rather be a warrior in a garden. I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Okay, I'll say that again. I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in the war. Okay. And so the more I thought about those words, the more I realized that peace is a virtue, just like patience is. Peace and patience go hand in hand, if you ask me. Think about Yahshua on that water out there with Peter and them, and they were sailing across, right? They were sailing across the body of water, right? And the storm brewed up, and Yahshua he knocked out, he sleep, and then all the guys on the ship start losing their cool because the storm is kicking up so hard. Well, Yahshua was at peace. And when he was awakened, instead of him joining the fray, instead of him getting frazzled by his surroundings, he instituted patience. And that patience and that peace went hand in hand, so much so to the point where Yahshua was able to command the wind and the waves to be still. Okay. And that's the type of peace and patience that I've sought over my life for so very long. But to walk around and allow myself to wear a mask means that the truth is being covered up. And in this day and age, it's important that we don't cover the truth. The truth has been covered up too long. The truth has been covered up quite too long. Okay. And now, as the prophets and saints and the elect of the Most High are being revealed in this day, excuse me, I think it's hand in hand that with the revelation of these folks, your brothers, your sisters across the four corners of the world, that it's also important that the truth be uncovered as well. And I was led to the book of Job, chapter 9, verse 24. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? So I thought about that. I thought about that verse, and I've been giving a lot of thought to it because, you know, it's one of those types of situations where, as so called Black people in this country, we've been called wicked, we've been called evil. The color black itself, when we are different shades of brown people, the color black itself is synonymous with low vibratory energy. The color black itself is associated with darkness and wickedness. And so to be called black and to accept that name onto ourselves, when we are different shades and hues of brown, it has done something to our psyche. And when we think of wickedness and we think of evil, synonymously, our thought goes to black. Whereas when we think of white, we think of purity, we think of goodness, we think of renewal, we think of all the things that are uh, that go along with that one color. Okay. Whereas when we think black, we think death, we think sadness, we think wickedness, we think evil. And it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like that. And in realizing that deeper, there's different nuances almost every day to the truth. There's different nuances all the time that arise as we study, as we think about these things. And I had to ask myself, what is really wicked? Like, who is really wicked? Like, who is the he? In Job chapter 9, verse 24, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? Well, I thought about wisdom for a moment and how wisdom is feminine. Wisdom is her. Wisdom is she. Wisdom is that eternal presence alongside the Most High. Okay, and we read about wisdom in the book of the Wisdom of Solomon, and we read about wisdom in the book of Proverbs. We hear about wisdom in Genesis chapter 1. Wisdom synonymous with the Ruach HaKodesh, the great spirit, that feminine and maternal comforting aspect of the Most High. And this live stream isn't about that particular statement. Instead, it's looking at that reality and that truth in conjunction with wickedness, and wickedness being typified as the wicked being typified as that energy that um, is also synonymous with destruction, synonymous with deceit, synonymous with evil, okay, synonymous with pain and suffering. All of these things are synonymous with wickedness. And when we talk about the book of Job and we look at how the wicked have covered the faces of the judges thereof, who are these judges? Well, the judges are the prophets of the Most High. The judges are the people of the book who were originally commissioned to deliver the word of truth throughout the nation of Israel and to all of those of the Gentile nations who would seek to live in Torah, who would seek to live according to the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High. Now, we can talk about wickedness all day long in the aspect of what the children of Israel did in order to get into the position where we would be scattered to the four corners of the world. And that's a common theme on this channel, primarily because most of you know, if you're a new supporter of this channel, welcome, welcome. If you're just now seeing a lot of the content and getting the swing of things as far as how I've been called to deliver the content, welcome. But you'll notice I don't say subscriber, I say supporter. And we all been called in a sense to support one another, especially in the truth, especially in this walk, right? But you'll notice that I have this thing where I don't like to point the finger necessarily, realizing that if I point the finger, there are three pointing back at me. See that? Three pointing back at me while one is pointing at you. And I think it's crucial when we do self analyzation to recognize the three fingers pointing back at us. And it's crucial to healing when we realize that we have three fingers that are pointing back at us when we're pointing at a problem. And what is it about that problem with the one finger pointing at it that would make us want to reanalyze that awareness and that focus on the problem solely and get back to a point where we can focus the three fingers back on us and see what was it that we did, what was it that caused the problem to fluctuate, what was it that caused the problem to magnify in our existence, in our life. Because when we look at problems, I think the more you analyze life, the more you can see problems are an inheritance. Everyone goes through a set of problems, but it's how we deal with the problems and the perspective that we apply to the problem that helps us either rise above it or causes us to sink deeper into it. And when we find ourselves in a problem, a lot of times those of us who don't like self accountability will point a finger at others in blaming them for our issue. And, you know, I don't like doing that as a person. I like to lead by example. I like to I like to illustrate the walk and calling of the Most High, and I like to live that way in the tenets of the truth. And that's why I had a big problem with that saying, you know, oh, they got me out of my character. Well, no, if my character is that of the Most High, well, first of all, I don't want it to be a character. Okay. A character is something that's contrived. A character is something that's acted out for a moment until the lights are out, until the stage curtain closes, and until everybody goes back behind the scene. I would rather live in the tenets of that supposed character and be the real deal versus being a character that is contrived from the real deal source. And so when we talk about living in the fruits of the spirit, that's what a lot of people who put on the mask seek to be in front of others. But it's only when we're really tried and tested that that mask is either going to be your real face or it's going to be that just a mask. And when the test actually appears and manifests, the true you comes out. And I think that's another reason why the name True Jew was blessed to me, because it's about being true. You know, we speak life to ourselves. We speak life to ourselves daily, and we speak life to ourselves subliminally in many different ways. And a lot of times, when we speak words, especially in this English language, we can get taken back by the things that we say, not knowing what we're saying. Simply saying good morning versus great rising can have a and can have an ultimate effect on your day. Because in English is the type of language where, you know, a word can be spelled a certain way, but phonetically it sounds like another word. Okay. And English is very tricky. And not to go off on a tangent, but side note, English is very tricky. Something that is so beautiful and great as a new day, when we see the sun coming around again, for some reason, English calls that morning when it should be a beautiful, beautiful experience. At the same time, when someone passes away and we're in that funeral home or we're at the funeral, that act of crying loudly and that act of sobbing, that act of feeling sad is called mourning as well. So, in my view of things, it shouldn't be like that. What's negative shouldn't be mixed with what's positive, because then there'll be no delineation as to what is what. Okay. But when we say great rising, when the sun comes back around, that great rising of positive energy and a positive attitude allows us to take on the day a little bit better. And if there should be an instance where great sadness takes place in the day, that sadness, typified as mourning, can be separated from the blessing of the great rise of the sun. Okay, so that's just how, a quick example of the nuances of the English language, right? But I had to really analyze myself, especially with all of this madness going on in the land in regards to true wickedness. And I had to say, wait a second. I've, I've broken the law, statutes, and commands in my life. The scriptures tell us that the breaking of one the breaking of one law is akin or like breaking all of them. Breaking the least of the laws like breaking the greatest of the law. And by that account, I can be seen as a wicked individual in the eyes of the Most High. But as I began reading the paper, I mean, yeah, reading the paper, but also reading the scriptures, I really had to look deeper at certain things that were taking place, like in the book of Genesis, where, you know, our forefathers all over the place were involved in warfare, involved in blood spilling, blood shedding, involved in the taking over of nations, involved in all sorts of instances where life was lost and, people had to arm themselves and people had to move a certain way in order to get something that they've never had. And a lot of times those actions were violent, but still the Most High blessed these people. Still, the Most High guided them into their destinations, and yeah, a lot of these people ended up, obviously losing their lives, transitioning. Some of these people came back again, through their seed line. But what I noticed is this trend where the things that we might today construe as being violent and wicked, although they were violent, they weren't necessarily seen as wickedness in the eyes of the Most High, and instead were seen as divine will being taken place and in a divine timing. And for instance, when Moshe came down from the mount with the Ten Commandments, the original tablets, and saw the children of Israel and the strangers worshiping the golden calf, he was so upset and distraught that he broke the tablets. And then he requested that all of those who truly believe in YAHUWAH come to him and make way for war amongst the children of Israel who were there. And he said in so many words, all right, all of you sons of Levi, y'all get together with me, get your swords together, because you're going to have to go kill your brother. You're going to have to go kill your friend. You're going to have to go kill family. Who's standing with me? Because what I see when I come down from this mount is a great atrocity. Because Yahweh found out about it. He was going to kill everybody in Israel. But Moshe talked him out of it. So when Moshe gets back down to the mount, he's like, all right, well, I got to do something. I got to do something. I got to make something happen. And about 3,000 men were killed. that day out of the children of Israel and the strangers who were with them for worshiping the golden calf. And so when I think about that, and I think about how Yahuwah was gonna kill these people too, it kind of brings this idea back to my mind of what is truly wicked. What is truly wickedness, and what level of wickedness have I participated in, right? And I began to look at what's going on in the land. I began to look at um, all the jib jabs. I'll say that. Y'all know what I'm talking about. I began to look at all of the control through oppressive resource management. I began to look at the capitalist society that we live in from the standpoint of homes and office buildings and warehouses just sitting vacant, collecting dust, deteriorating daily without anybody living in them, using them, being able to utilize them for business and entrepreneurial pursuits. Meanwhile, there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people who are homeless, and um, thousands of individuals who would like to be given a chance to work with their own hands from an entrepreneurial standpoint, but are being stopped. There's redlining, the control of um, homes in certain areas that people of a certain hue are not being able to rent or purchase. And they're being kept from these homes purposefully. You have rental discrimination, uh, ownership discrimination. You have people, scientists, and warmongers who are creating all sorts of horrendous weapons of war, nuclear bombs, nuclear fusion. You have missiles, you have tanks, and all sorts of um, armor piercing ammunition and laser beams and all of this stuff that can kill people and has killed people. We have wars being fought right now that have nothing to do with the protection of lands, nothing to do with the protection of peoples and the protection of civil rights, constitutional rights, but instead politicized wars where people, sons and daughters, are being sent into war to be killed as fodder for these political fires that have been set. Meanwhile, those who are leading the people into war are uh, uh, coming up with these war game scenarios, are the ones sitting back and just sending folks in to be killed left and right daily. Um, we see children being trafficked, people being trafficked, and those who are exploiting these children and these peoples not being punished, not being arrested, not being uh, indicted. We see an upsurge in human trafficking all over the world, as a matter of fact. And we see the continuance of um, sexual exploitation of people. We see the continual uh, divide and conquer strategies and techniques by those of the so called elite who are ruling the world right now. And so when we look at Job chapter 24 and we think about the earth is given into the hand of the wicked, and then we match up what we see going on through the earth at a great, great level, I had to ask myself, well, who is the wicked? And it has to be those who are running the world, because that's who the world has been given into the hands to. It has to be Hashatan, it has to be Satan, because everywhere we look with eyes wide open, we see that all of goodness is being tried. Anything that is of a righteous manner is being called evil, and anything that is evil is being called good. Anything that has to do with the Most High is being attempted to be shut down, attempted to be wiped over, attempted to be hidden, while all things that are wicked and nasty and perverse are being put out on the forefront in front of the world to celebrate, in front of the peoples of the world to adopt within their own daily walks. And it's horrible. I mean, it's simply horrible. So much so I had to ask myself, am I really wicked? I've never I've never done n- none of the atrocities that have been done to my people. I've never killed my brother. I've never killed my sister. Okay. I've never done anything to children. I've never RAPE'd a woman. I've never done nothing homosexual. I've never hurt nobody uh, without defending myself or family. Okay. I've never um, controlled somebody's resources. I've never took somebody's home from them and made them homeless and made them have to sleep in the cold. Um, I've never took food from somebody. I've never done the things that we see happening daily that people don't be seeming to get punished for. Okay, and I'm talking about the elites. Okay. I've never controlled resources to the point where if someone didn't have payment for them, that I cut them off from those resources that I knew they needed. Okay. I've never snatched people from their homes. I've never taken and sold a person. I've never transferred an individual and exploited them for their body. I've never enslaved an individual. Okay. I've never done any of those things. And in my life, at one time, I was accused of being one of the most wicked people ever, through the doctrine of Christianity, having this guilt complex placed on me for things that I've never done, for true wickedness that I've never been a part of. I'm not a son of Satan. I'm not a child of the devil. And so when I had to realize, wait a second, the children of the devil are up here pointing fingers at all of the righteous. The children of the devil are the ones accusing us of wickedness in order to remove themselves from the conversation. The children of the devil are the ones accusing us of being evil when they are the ones who have headlined and pioneered what we see as wickedness today. And I had to really look at that. And I had to really take account of this because when we move forward in truth, we have to do like that scale, that tipping of the scale. And our hope is that our heart, our mind, our conscience is lighter than a feather. Meaning, while we are here, we've done everything in our power to not only renew our minds, but to identify those parts of ourselves that didn't sit well with us so that we can absolve ourselves of those things, okay, so that we can atone for those things and then be made with a renewed mind so that when and as we move forward, the complex of guilt is also removed from our being and we can begin to live a life in the calling away from those things that are construed as being done for the wicked one, because the devil likes to play tricks. And one of the biggest tricks that the devil uses is, especially on the children of the light, is tries to make them recall moments in time where they would be considered guilty of something. And many of us have an issue with feeling guilt, so much so to the point that it stops us from doing the goodness of the Most High's calling. Because we feel, oh, we're guilty. And because we're guilty, there's no way any of my actions will be accepted by the Most High. Oh, I'm so guilty that I could never do anything for the Most High. Would the Most High accept this from me? Because I'm guilty. And if I'm guilty, well, I might as well just keep on doing what it is I was doing to be guilty in the first place, or I might as well not do anything and just stay where I'm at in the corner and stay stagnant because I feel so guilty. And that's a trick of the devil. That's a trick of the devil to try to make you feel so guilty, even though you know you've been forgiven, that you don't do what you need to do now in order to redeem the time, in order to make up the time, in order to get right with the Most High and move double, triple, quadruple time toward the Most High so that you can now do the works that the Most High asks of you to fulfill that version and that aspect of the divine will as coming from the Most High through you. as a vessel of the Most High and not a tool or a mechanism for wickedness. Okay. As I was looking through everything, reanalyzing myself daily, looking at the narrative in many different ways pertaining to our people, as far as being in the transatlantic slave trade, as far as being in the trans-Arabian slave trade or the East African slave trade. And both of these regions um, being exploited in order to identify the people of the book, the children of Israel, and in order to bring us to a land that we would not know, in order to take us to a place that we would not know, in order to remove our culture, remove our heritage, remove us from our inheritance. You know, I was talking about power with my Isha the other night, and I was speaking about how at one time a son, once we were moved into the land, the promised land of milk and honey, allotted to our forefathers, each of us would receive an inheritance of land, a plot of land, where we didn't have to start over. We didn't have to worry about schmoozing up to the enemy of our people. We didn't have to worry about kissing the butt of the white man. We didn't have to worry about doing anything strange for a piece of change. Each man, each son was giving a piece of land. Therefore, when he was married to his wife or his wives and his children were being born, each person had the opportunity to work a trade, to work livestock, to work cattle, to work agriculture, to do things that were synonymous with continuing to build up the nation that he was a part of. We didn't have to worry about generational curses in the sense of, oh well, daddy fell off, so because daddy fell off, now I don't have an inheritance and I should have received the baton instead of having to make the baton over again, and then began running the race and then get so far caught up in the race where now my son hopefully can take the baton, but something happens to where now I'm not able to hand the baton off to my son and the baton has disappeared. So now he has to go on and create the baton and run the race fast. And so that happened with our people, and it still happens with our people so often in this society that many of us have given up. Many of us have forgotten the original inheritance and have forgotten what it means to be motivated and inspired due to you being a part of a special people group. Okay. And it's very unfortunate, but there was a point in time where we didn't have to worry about that. We didn't have to worry about if I'm going to have land. The energy that is today put into working a 9 to 5 to hopefully get a piece of land and then to hopefully make something out of yourself on that land to where you can provide for your family sustainably and naturally. We didn't have to worry about that back in the day. That was something that we didn't have to consider. All we had to do was pick up the slack from what we were given and continue in it. And that's what inheritance is all about. That's what heritage is all about. Heritage is about continuing within the blessings that were bestowed to you as a people, whatever those blessings are. Inheritance is about taking your part and parcel within the heritage that helps give you power in order to stay motivated and inspired to want to belong to the heritage that you are working for and working as a part of. Because we have been taken from our heritage and our inheritance, many of us feel isolated. And many of us feel like it's every man for himself. Many of us feel like there is no more camaraderie. There is no more brotherhood. There is no more kinsmen. There is no more um, uh, pride and nationality. Now, I'm not talking about disastrous, ill minded pride. I'm talking about respectful pride. I'm talking about the idea that you can be happy to be a part of somebody and something that predates your existence in this realm, something in a people that you were born into, okay, where you could continue in the legacy and greatness of that people, okay. And as I began to look at this, and I began to analyze what true wickedness was, I had to think about everything that was done to us when we were taken and exploited and utilized for slavery. And I had to think about Everyone who was a part of that slavery, how those who exploited us and profited off of us are still alive today and living fatly off of the land, and their children are living fatly off of the land. Then I had to think about those of us who were exploited and how many of us, the majority of us, are not living fatly off the land. Okay? How many of us are still being exploited to this day, where we have all but given up hope. Many of us have gone along to get along for so long that we've accepted the narrative given to us that, oh, we're nothing. We were supposed to be enslaved just based off of the color of our skin, and not enslaved because of something we did in wrongdoing toward the Most High. You see, we learn about enslavement of our people every year in school, starting from the fifth grade on up, pretty much. And the thing about it is, I'm sure not one person who will watch this live stream presentation later on can say they knew why we were enslaved as a people. I'm sure not one person can give me an answer or a response to our being in the public school system in regards to why we were enslaved. A lot of times you might hear statements like, oh, the strongest of the males were used for this or that. Okay, or the strongest of the males were bred. Their strength was used to breed with the women that were enslaved. And we hear about all this buck breaking, and we hear about all this bed winching, and we hear about all these horrendous acts that took place toward our people, but we don't ever hear the reason why. And let me let you in on a little secret. The reason why we don't hear this in the school system is because we're in school when our minds are still being matured, while our minds are still malleable. And if the teachers and instructors and the so-called teachers and instructors told us the reason why we were enslaved in school, then the Bible, the scriptures, school and scriptures would have to be blended again. Okay. And therefore, if school and scriptures have to be blended again, then spirituality and the state would have to be blended again. And then, if those were blended again and the children began to hear about why every year we were enslaved, then we would have to know who we were as a people, and we would no longer be carrying the names of our slave owners. We would no longer be sitting in class ignorant to who we actually are and why we got to where we were. And we would be healed as a people a lot sooner. We would be healed as a people a lot sooner. Imagine being told the reason why your ancestors were enslaved in the fifth grade. Your mind is still very malleable. Before you even consider drinking alcohol, before you consider smoking herbs and doing hard drugs and pills and popping pills, before you feel like you got to get out there on the block and sell crack cocaine, before you start considering selling methamphetamines, okay, and heroin, before you get out there and start thugging, imagine knowing the reason why your people were enslaved before all of those acts take place, to where you have a good 3, 4 years of your life to consider this, and then consider turning your life back over to the Most High as a people. You see, we don't get that opportunity in school, but it's changing. The more of our people begin to homeschool our children, the more we begin to control our curriculums, and the more we're active in our children's lives. When they get curriculums from the school, if we're not able to homeschool them, the more we can step in and correct the narrative. The more we can step in and begin to speak life to our children so they're not lost and have to also reset and regain time within themselves when they shouldn't have to, with elders all around them. Okay. And yes, I hear often our elders saying, especially those of the baby boomer generation, oh, this person in my family and that person in my family was doing their best to say and highlight that we are the true people of the book, the children of Israel. And I just didn't listen to them. I didn't want to listen to my son. He been out there on the corner preaching this word, and I thought he was crazy until somebody else came along that they respected and told them again. And now the baby boomer generation is starting to wake up. Unfortunately, however, Most of the baby boomer generation are grandparents and great grandparents by this time, depending on how their children and grandchildren got active with bringing in new generations. So the baby boomer generation feels not necessarily old, but it's kind of eating crow pie right now. And remember, I talked about that guilt complex. Some of the baby boomer generation has been inundated with ignorance, so much so to the point that they believe the lie, and so they would rather not admit their faults to their children and gaslight the child who is grown now. A lot of the baby boomer generation wants to gaslight their children. A lot of the baby boomer generation, I hate to say it, is very narcissistic, but I think that that was an inherited trait from the baby boomer generation at that time of our society. You know, we're talking about the late 40s and 50s through the 60s. So that generation, the two-parent home, the 2.5 children. I still don't know what 2.5 children is. The picket fence, with the vehicle, the family vehicle, the station wagon, and the dog and the cat. You know, all of that American dream mess is what has our baby boomer generation in the so-called black community still lost in the sauce at times, because a lot of them still want to live that American dream because that's all they saw. That's all they saw. They didn't recognize the American nightmare. Okay. A lot of our people from that generation, my generation, I'm the crack era generation. I'm the crack baby generation. I had to go to school with crack babies. I'm an 80s baby and happy for it, because born in the 80s mean that I had an opportunity to be woke to what was going on, to be awakened to what was going on, and to stay in that awakened state longer, earlier than most people. Okay. And so I seen it. I'm from the hood. I seen everything. I've seen it all. I've seen it all. Only thing I ain't seen yet is the most high coming back and cracking open that sky. Okay. That's pretty much everything. So I don't need to sit up here and dibble and dabble in ideas and ideologies and things that aren't going to serve our people. Even though I see a lot of my peers, the Generation Xers and all of those guys, that are still up here chasing after the Elon Musks of the world, still wanting to go on vacay and still having to uh, do the foreign cars and all of this type of thing for status and social status and all that. What is social status as a so-called black man, woman, or child in the country of our enslavement? Social status means absolutely nothing when you're not free. We had social status when we were known as the children of Israel, not only by the outsiders, but who we were. When we knew our name, when we knew our stance in society as according to the Most High, when we knew who our heritage was, and when we knew what our inheritance was, when we knew what our language was, when we had our names intact, when we weren't carrying the last name of someone else, when we knew what tribe we belonged to, when we knew the law, statutes, and commands of the Most High, which is of the utmost importance. That was social status. That is when we were put above all nations of the world. That is when the Most High chose us as a special people unto himself in order to separate us from the rest of the world so that we could be stewards of light and love in a world that was going to be overran by wickedness. And by the time we got onto the scene, was already being overran by wickedness. That's true social status. So anything else outside of being returned to my inheritance, it means nothing to me. It means absolutely nothing to me. And I know that could take people back sometimes. That could throw people off sometimes, because I'm supposed to be using my youth to attain material. I'm supposed to be using my youth right now to attain status socially. I'm supposed to be using my youth right now to help build someone else's corporation. I'm supposed to be using my youth right now to sit on the boardrooms and to gain false idea of power. Okay, but I've chosen not to do that. I've chosen not to focus on that form of power. I've chosen to focus on the power of my people, the power meaning the Most High. Okay. And this is something that it means a lot to me. And the more that we talk about this, I hope it begins to mean a lot to you. But as I looked through all that, I looked at, I had to get me a little list together of the wickedness that was committed against my people. And I think it's important that I put a disclaimer out there for trigger warning because I'm about to read an article that I was led to that was written in 2019 that proves my point. Just another narrative that proves the point being brought through me in regards to how we were told we were the wicked ones and we were never told why we were wicked. We were taught that we were enslaved, which is true, but we were never told why we were enslaved, why we were identified, and how come all of Africa wasn't enslaved, but how come only a certain people from Africa were enslaved? What was so interesting about those people versus the other people that weren't enslaved, right? Mama, how come nobody ever came from Africa to come and get us? Well, the answer to that is simple too, because the people that were in Africa who helped slave us and sell us away were not our people. We didn't know coming up that, and I hate to have to say these things, but it's true. We didn't know that all people in Africa wasn't our people. Just like if you're French, all people in Europe aren't your people. If you German, all people in Europe aren't your people. Just because they came from the same region doesn't mean that they're all of the same stock. And it's the same thing, even more so with Africa. You know, Africa's 54 countries comprised of billions of people and thousands of different tribal affiliations and groups, okay, and nations. And so we'd be asinine to think that people who didn't come from the same stock of us would also be the people who would come and get us. No, we were exploited on all fronts. And when it came to chattel slavery, there was a level of wickedness that even the African people who sold us into enslavement could not imagine. Because one thing that was congruent on the continent of Africa was how people serve and how people operate in bondage and how people keep other people in bondage in the system and the hierarchy of the different nations of Africa. You know, bondage in Africa is totally, totally different than the shadow slavery that's experienced from the trans Atlantic and trans Arabian slave trades. Okay. Chattel slavery has to deal with business procedure and has to deal with uh, the total debasement of a people psychologically and physically, so much so to the point where that people is mentally destroyed. Okay. Bondage in a traditional sense had to deal with conquering of a people and maintaining that person's lineage in servitude. Okay, not removing a person's culture or a person's language affiliation, instead controlling that person as a servant in regards to the nation that had absorbed the nation who was defeated in battle. Okay, so it's we're talking about totally different ideals and ideologies here. But I'm going to read something to you that really brought this fact home for me. And trigger warning, it's disheartening and it's very interesting that this is a reality for our people here and the people who are guilty, the true guilty and wicked party who was involved with what I'm about to read from a power standpoint are still here to this day. You know, and I'm going to read some statements in this article that would kind of detail that they're not still here. But this is what you have to recognize. In chattel slavery, you had the super elite. Okay. You have the elitists who had the big bank, the big pockets, those who came from Europe and were in charge of being governors and in charge of running the colonies. Okay. They had small bands of soldiers, militia with them that helped them gather lands coming from the East Coast, the Eastern Shoreboard, fighting the Powhatan people, tricking the Powhatan people who are already a part of a big, humongous confederacy. Okay, and this confederacy um, being the inspiration for what we see today from the Constitution of the United States, and a whole nother lesson. But many things took place when these people came over in order to help them build capital in this land. Then you have the slave buyers with the big pockets who would not dare dream of lifting a hammer to strike a nail into a piece of wood. Then you have the slave traders who in history class would always be looked at as the lower rung of the elitist society, those people who did the dirty work, but were still appreciated and oftentimes celebrated for their ability to capture all of this free labor for those who were in the social elitist class who paid them. Then you had those who were not slave traders out of that same people group, the average Europeans, right? Who today are looked at as the everyday 9 to 5 workers who claim they didn't inherit anything, who got to work just as hard as you and I in society. And why are you blaming me? I wasn't involved with enslavement and all of this sort of thing. But in those days, they were your patty rollers. They were your slave catchers. They were your individuals who kept the eye out, who didn't want to have any competition from the lower ranked jobs that were going to be given out to those of our people who purchased freedom or who were given freedom by a so-called massa. Okay, because you have to remember, coming from Europe over to this country, it was competitive for all the European people to have to come to a country that already existed, a land of people who were already here, who were already having their own intertribal issues, people who already had big civilizations. Okay, so you have to remember the environment at which all of these people came from Europe. And many of the people who originally came from Europe were criminals and the lowest rung in society in European society. So these people weren't necessarily your brightest thinkers. They weren't necessarily people who were couth and who were morally sound. They were people who were willing to do whatever they needed to do to get a piece of a pie that they never baked. Okay. And this is very important. And these are the statements and elements that the truly wicked seek to cover up. Okay. And we talk about pointing a finger and three pointing back at you. Well, they point two fingers and have six pointing back at them. And those fingers that are pointing back at them, they do their best to hide and cover up. And this is why our children are still being inundated with a false narrative in regards to what actually happened in this land. And so, as you have historians who are willing to bite the bullet of their own kind, who are willing to begin outing their people, who are beginning to willing to see the truth of the narrative for what it is, they themselves are getting sick to their stomach. They themselves are getting upset. They themselves are feeling as though, should we really continue to research into this? Because the deeper we research into this, the more problems we see, the more pain is going to be stirred up. And most of our people are living at peace right now. But you have to remember that there was always three tiers to the colonial presence. And I'll say it again. There was the elitist tier, then there was the sub elite, those who controlled industry, okay, on a managerial level, who were able to keep the cogs greased and oiled. Then you have the lower tier, okay? The everyday Tom, Dick, and Harry that was going along to get along, but can go along and get along because they had the complexion of the protection of the collection, okay? Always looking to get an upper hand, okay? And if they could be brought into the the elitist class of the society, then they would, without a doubt. Okay. And so this is what we have to realize. But I'm going to read you an article right now that I found in the Washington Post that details this very clearly. And as you hear this, I want you to take note. Now, let me wet my beak, wet my whistle here. I'm going to read this article, and I want you all to take note. This was written September 14th, 2019, published at 7 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time in the Washington Post. They were once America's cruelest, richest slave traders. Why does no one know their names? Trigger warning. A window in the basement of Isaac Franklin and John Armfield's slaveholding pen in Alexandria, Virginia. The two men, largely forgotten today, were the most successful and cruelest domestic slave traders in American history. The two most ruthless domestic slave traders in America had a secret language for their business. Slave trading was a game. The men, Isaac Franklin and John Armfield, were daring pirates or one-eyed men, a euphemism for their penises. The women they bought and sold were fancy maids, a term signifying youth, beauty, and potential for sexual exploitation by buyers or the traders themselves. To my certain knowledge, she has been used, and that smartly, by a one-eyed man about my size and age. Excuse my foolishness. Isaac Franklin's nephew James, an employee and his uncle's protege, wrote in a typical business correspondence referring to Caroline Brown, an enslaved woman who suffered repeated rape and abuse at James's hands for 5 months. She was 18 at the time and just over 5 feet tall. Franklin and Armfield, who headquartered their slave trading business in a townhouse that still stands in Alexandria, Virginia, sold more enslaved people, separated more families, and made more money from the trade than almost anyone else in America. Between the 1820s and 1830s, the two men reigned as the undisputed tycoons of the domestic slave trade, as Smithsonian Magazine put it. Trigger. Their townhouse still sits to this day in Alexandria, Virginia, and is a museum celebrating these two men to this day. End of side note. As the country marks the 400th anniversary of the arrival of the first enslaved Africans, and of course, they're talking about 1619 when we know that slavery really started in 1492 at the Spanish Inquisition. And we truly know that the first enslaved peoples began to be enslaved in 1492 in this country around 1501. In the Caribbean, 1501, the island that's now known as Haiti, and Dominican Republic, which the Spanish Portuguese named, or which the Portuguese, named Hispaniola, the Spanish named Hispaniola, and the like. And then we see those of our people from West Africa being taken over, while those of our people in the Caribbean were being taken out to Europe as proof of a people that can be identified for slavery. Okay. But I'm going to have to side note this article at times. As much as I would love to read it, I want you to read it straight through. I want you to hear how my mind worked when I first read this article, even if it's just a piece of my mind. As the country marks the 400th anniversary of the arrival of the first enslaved Africans in Jamestown, Americans are being forced to confront the brutality of slavery and of the people who profited from it. Few profited more than the two Virginia slave traders. Their success was immense. The duo amassed a fortune worth several billions in today's dollars and retired as two of the nation's wealthiest men, according to Joshua Rothman, a professor of history at the University of Alabama, who is writing a book on Franklin and Armfield. I'm sure he is. Several factors set the pair apart, Rothman explained. For one thing, their timing was impeccable. They got into the domestic slave trade just as the cotton economy and American demand for enslaved labor exploded and quit right before the United States sank into the financial panic of 1837. Their location was also prime, perched so they could collect enslaved people from plantations across Virginia and Maryland and sending them on forced marches in groups of several hundred, known as coffles, or on tightly packed ships along the Atlantic coast to the deep south. While their business strategy was not especially innovative, it was conducted on a scale bigger and better than anyone else, Rothman said. Franklin and Armfield transported an estimated 10,000 enslaved people over the course of their careers, according to Rothman. Side note, these guys transported enslaved people. You see, they didn't say enslaved Africans. Keep that in mind, because many of the indigenous people who were on the Eastern Shoreboard were those of African descent who came over during the days of Mansa Musa, who also came over during the years of uh, uh, 725 AD, okay, who came over previously to anybody even identifying what this land was. And those people were of Israelite descent, Northeast African descent. So when the European got here, they saw people on the Eastern Shoreboard who they described as looking like the Ethiopians, woolly haired people, melanated people. And those same people were then identified to be enslaved all up and down the Eastern Shoreboard to the Deep South. This is a part of history that is kept from us as well. Okay. Here are the facts about the enslavement of Africans in U.S. history. They're the ones who turned the business of selling humans from one part of the US to another, you see, into a very modern organized business. It didn't say they're the ones who turned the business of selling humans from Africa to the US. No, no, no. They're the ones who turned the business of selling humans from one part of the US to another into a very modern organized business. No longer just one trader who might move a few people from one plantation to another. And one thing I had to say, they said they were enslaving people from plantations. They would collect enslaved people from plantations across Virginia and Maryland and send them on forced marches. These people weren't enslaved. These people were free people of color who were forced into bondage as prisoners of war and then shipped around the country and then enslaved. Okay? We have to begin to get the terminology right in order to make sense of what's actually going on. Okay. And you know what? I'm going to read one more piece of this article and then continue into some scriptures. They're the ones who turned the business of selling humans from one part of the US to another into a very modern, organized business. No longer just one trader who might move a few people from one plantation to another, said Maury D. McInnes, a professor at the University of Texas at Austin, who studies the cultural history of slavery. They created a modern machinery to support the business of human trafficking. Human trafficking. Human trafficking, meaning the kidnapping and dispersal and removement of a people for economical exploitative means and gains, and delivering those people to another group of people who can pay and fund for that delivery. Keep that in mind. Trafficking works both ways. When you're on a freeway going north, there's also a freeway going south. When you're on a freeway driving east, there's also a freeway driving west. And trafficking of humans works the same way. They created a modern machinery to support the business of human trafficking. That was possible largely because of the traders' willingness to be unusually cruel and heartless, even for a business built around the sale of human beings, as they committed atrocities they appeared to relish. The earth has been given into the hands of the wicked. I want you to realize something as Hebrew Israelite people who were captured in enslavement, sold all over the world, scattered to the world, forced into bondage, forced into shadow slavery, forced to be ripped apart from our families, forced into buck breaking, forced into rape, forced into childbearing, forced into the stealing and kidnapping of our children, forced into the breaking up of families, forced into all sorts of deplorable mindsets towards one another, forced into the hatred of our brother and our sister, our mamas, our papas. Many of us don't know our fathers. Some of us, unfortunately, were ripped from our mothers before we knew who they were. And all of this happened, and it was law. All of this happened, and the group of people who did this didn't see any ill reason why they should stop. Okay, I need you to really hear this. But what does the Most High say about us? What is the Most High, or what was the Most High's original intent for us? We were originally created to be a nation of priests. We were created as a royal nation. We were created as a royal priesthood and a royal bloodline. And this is something that oftentimes escapes from us. Yeah, still going strong, Brother D. Warner. Welcome, family. Welcome to all the people who's just now tuning in. And Shabbat Shalom. We still don't understand our value and our worth. Our value to the European, to the slave owner, to the Arab who was used as the whipping stick by the Most High, immediately identified our value, not because of our physicalities, not because of our abilities to endure through heat, not because of our ability to endure through hard work, but they identified us as being the people of the book who, because of our transgression of the law, statutes, and commands of the Most High, were going to be decreed by the Most High as to serve under curses to the rest of the nations. Ooh, it hurts. It hurts to have to admit this. But in admitting this, when we can identify ourselves as being those of the people of the book who was placed under the curses that the Most High said would happen to us if we fell away from the law, statutes, commands decreed to us, then we could also identify the issue clouding us and covering over us as a people. And we wouldn't have had to go for 400 years or 350 so years without knowing who we were, because it only takes a couple generations to remove a people from their inheritance, to remove a people's language from them, to remove a people's identity from them. Once the elders are gone, we have a saying in our people's group. We have a saying amongst our people. When the elders die, we lose a library. When mama and papa are taken from us, and they are replaced with those who want to deliver a certain narrative to us that would belittle us, that would remove us from our true mental, spiritual power, then we are mentally and spiritually destroyed, and all that is left is a physical vessel. And that physical vessel can be filled up with anything that the oppressor or those who seek to control the malleability of our minds wants to inject into that vessel. This is why the scriptures say, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge, and they don't consider who they are. A donkey is broken to work on a field, but still knows who its master is. An ox is broken to work and plow through the land, through the field, through the shrub, but still knows who its owner is. But the children of Israel were destroyed so much that we never even considered where we were from, who we were. All we knew is that we were speaking a language that was foreign to us, that we didn't understand, and we had to make the best of being in a new land amongst people who did not have our favor in mind. Keep this in mind, family. Now, I already mentioned to those who are coming in that this is going to be a triggering, a bunch of trigger moments. I've dealt with them myself. I've dealt with the button pressing. I've dealt with the anger. I've dealt with the upsetness. I've dealt with the bitterness. I've dealt with all of it. So I speak in love. And love is the truth. Love is the keeping of the law, statutes, and commands of the Most High. Without true love, there is nothing. There's only lies and deceit. And the truth hurts, like we like to say. The truth hurts. And the truth isn't going to hurt just for one side of the group of people who the truth is in relevance to, but the truth is going to hurt to those who try to hide the truth, and maybe much more so. Because those who have hidden the truth have been living fatly off of the land based off of a lie. While those who have been living meagerly in the land have had to scurry and do the best that we could to find what the truth was in order to set our minds free. Those who have capitalized off of a lie are in fear of the truth being presented out into the world right now. But there's no turning back. And the truth is so strong that the truth must always prevail. It just so happens that the truth always more so benefits one group of people, the people or the person or the idea that was hidden. That's who the truth benefits. The truth doesn't benefit the people who are capitalizing off of deceit and the lie. And this is why so much fear is s- mu- uh, is cultivated and mustered up in regards to the truth. This is why there's billions and billions of dollars spent yearly to keep the truth away from people. Okay. But you have to know, child of Israel, daughter of Zion, how the Most High originally created you to be. Isaiah chapter 61, verse 6 tells us, but you shall be called the priests of YAHUWAH. They shall speak of you as the ministers of our God. You shall eat the wealth of the nations, and in their glory you shall boast. You see, we were called to be the priests of the Most High in this land today. Our inheritance was to eat the wealth of the nations. You see, the same way the children of Levi or Levi were to eat of the wealth of the children of Israel, a tenth of the portion of the crops that were cultivated, a tenth of the portion of the cattle and livestock that was reared, was supposed to go to the children of Levi or the tribe of Levi or Levi as a tithe, hence where tithes originally came from. The children of Israel were supposed to eat from the wealth of the nations for being the priest of YAHUWAH to the world. Okay? And in their glory you shall boast. The glory of the nations is they manufactured and did what they were supposed to do and build and keep industry going. Their glory was to be ours, and we would boast in it because we were going to be elevated above all nations. Imagine us maintaining our position with the Most High from the days of old all the way into 2022. We would still be the top, and every other nation on earth would have to serve us. Every other nation would be in obedience to our Elohim. Every other nation would be in reverence to the power that we serve and the power that has chosen us to be who we are. It's not far fetched at all because we see that the wicked power, Satan, has a people as well. And those people are not seeking the face of our power. They hold seance. They hold sacrifice of energy. They are child and baby trafficking. They are slaughtering people every day. They are bombing nations every single day, not because of honest warfare, not because of true disagreements between nations, but because that bloodshed is a sacrifice to their wicked one, the devil, to their power. You see? So on this earth, there's going to be two groups of people. Whether one group serves one power or one group serves another power, there's going to be a power and there's going to be some servitude. The people who the world and the earth has been given into the hands of now, that wicked one, the people who are ruling the earth as the elites today, they are in service to the wicked one. That is their power. While those of us who are waking up to our identity, and waking up to our identity should mean that we are now seeking our culture. And seeking our culture should now mean that we are living in the laws and tenets of the Most High, the laws, statutes, and commands of the Most High, right? Now we are seeking the face of our power. And eventually, there's going to be a huge clash. And that clash is what the saints, the prophets, the elect daily pray for strength to endure. Okay. Exodus chapter 19, verse 6 tells us that, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests, okay, and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the people of Yasharal or the people of Israel. So you see, Moshe, when we were taken out of Kemet and led from Mitzrayim, Kemet, Mitzrayim, Egypt, the same place. Mitzrayim in the Hebrew means house of bondage. When we were led from Kemet, Moshe was told to tell his family, his kinsmen, that you shall be to me, speaking to YAHUWAH, the Most High, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Our original delegation in this planet, on this place, was to be priests of the Most High, a set apart nation, not like the others, one that will stand above and stand out because we had been dealing with the creator of all things. We had the rule book, we had the manual on what it meant to actually live and thrive and survive in this world that was going to eventually be overtaken by wickedness. And how great did we transgress the laws of the Most High? How great did we move away from the laws and statutes and commands of the Most High in order to rightly rule our nation? In exchange to want to be like the nations who were living under the wicked one, who were living under Satan. What a great mistake we made as a people. So you see, the level of our punishment was so great that we were scattered to the nations. And those same wicked minded people who served Satan used wickedness and the tenets and the ideals and ideologies of Satan to punish and chastise the Most High's children. We were going to be punished and chastised, but at the rate to which we were, through the chattel slavery that we experienced as a people, that even got the Most High's attention. And that is why the wicked must be punished for what they did to the children of Israel. See, I mentioned that there was always a level of bondage on the earth, but that bondage was always due to being prisoners of war, nations being absorbed by other nations, never the removal of culture, never the removal of language, never the removal of identity. If you were a bondman, a bondswoman in another nation in ancient times, they knew very well who you were and you knew who you were. We had never seen what we saw in the form of chattel slavery, where people's whole identities were destroyed and removed from them, where people's whole psyches were destroyed. Okay? Revelation 1, verse 6 tells us that, and made us a kingdom, priest to his God and Father, to him be glory and dominion forever and ever. Amen. Made us, talking about Yahshua Mashiach. The his God and Father is Yahshua Mashiach, who we are talking about right now. So just because we have been placed into the places of our captivity doesn't mean that we don't have a great calling over us. It's actually the contrary. We have a great and magnificent calling over us as a people. But to continue to move in bitterness and to continue to move in a way where we don't recognize the whipping stick of the Most High in order to make the proper corrections and heal back toward the Most High is where a lot of us fall short still to this day. Let's get back to the article. In surviving correspondence, they, talking about Franklin and Armfield, actually brag about raping enslaved people. Notice it didn't say enslaved women because these men were horrendous. Okay, they were homosexual men who didn't even think that they were homosexual. It was about controlling and demeaning and demasculating and effeminizing and horrendously encroaching into the spiritual space of indigenous men and women, whether they be Israelite or whether they be shipped in from the west coast of Africa as Israelites as well. In surviving correspondence, they actually brag about raping enslaved people who they've been processing. Notice processing, that means buck breaking, that means bed winching, okay? That means turning out. In surviving correspondence, they actually brag about raping enslaved people who they've been processing through the firm. I don't think I ever want to call a lawyer house a firm again after reading that statement. These people actually were moving in a sense and a level that they felt was professional. And it was the most demeaning, dehumanizing act that the world has ever seen. And this is why they don't feel bad about their actions even today, because they utilize terms in the English that seem to be professional, that seem to be positive, that seem to be forthcoming, that seem to be something to be upheld in modern society. We're going to keep on going. In surviving correspondence, they actually brag about raping enslaved people who they've been processing through the firm, said Calvin Schimmerhorn, a professor of history at Arizona State University. I found that odd because they quote someone from Arizona State University. Isn't that the home of the Sun Devils? This seemed to be as much a part of Franklin and Armfield's culture of business as, say, going to the bar after a successful court case might be the culture of a successful law firm's business. Don't you find that interesting how they correlate their slave enslavement business with a firm and then parallel it to a law firm? I find that to be very humiliating and very debilitating. Yet today, almost no one knows their names. Well, we're finna know their names today. When Franklin and Armfield retired, they passed easily into elite white society, achieving respectable dotage without a murmur. History, too, has largely left them off scot free, Schemmerhorn said. Few, if any, American high school or college students ever learn about the duo. Quote, I think America continues to be uncomfortable talking about the original sin of slavery, McCann said. And this is one of the most horrific chapters. Well, first of all, the original sin was coming to a land that was not theirs, in genociding and enslaving the people who were on this land, utilizing the resources, utilizing the acumen of a people who they lied to, formed treaties with, backed out of the treaties in order to continue the genocide and in order to continue the exploitation and continue to further their advances in this land for their own selfish and despicable and nasty needs. Okay? All of it was an original sin. And that original sin is still taking place to this day. And no one of their people group is seeking forgiveness for that original sin. Actually, there was a small video I did on my short, now that I remember, excuse me. And you had a group of so called white people getting on their knees and asking and seeking forgiveness for the Most High for what their particular ancestors did. And that was a start. That was a start. But there are so many others who are refusing to acknowledge this, but still living off the fatness of the land in many different ways and in tenets of ways. So Schimmerhorn said, few, if any, American high school or college students ever learn about the duo. I think America continues to be uncomfortable, and by America, they mean white society, Europeans, to be uncomfortable talking about the original sin of slavery. And this is one of its most horrific chapters. The whole thing was evil. Or, excuse me, the whole thing was so evil. The slave trade was all Isaac Franklin ever knew. He was born in 1718 to a wealthy planter family in Tennessee that owned a significant number of enslaved people, according to Rothman. In his late teens, right around the time the United States passed a law barring the transatlantic slave trade, Franklin and his older brothers grew interested in the domestic version, meaning the slave trade amongst people who were already here. They began transporting slave numbers of enslaved people between Virginia and the Deep South. How many of y'all got folk and kinfolk from Virginia, North and South Carolina that have been transferred into Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana? How many? I'm sure all of us. Franklin developed, all of us who are Israelites, that is, Franklin developed a taste for the business, and after taking a brief break to fight in the War of 1812, side note, they wrote this as if that was something valiant. Anytime they write of a white man fighting in the war of some this or some that, they always write it to take some of the sting off of what he was. But does anyone know what the War of 1812 was? The War of 1812 was the Europeans against the indigenous populations. That was the War of 1812. So anytime I hear about a European fighting in the War of 1812, I already know who he's fighting against because he sure wasn't fighting against his own on behalf of the people who were looking to be enslaved, okay? So it's still despicable to me, and it doesn't stand out as an accolade at all. But These are the types of points and facts that they like to bring and drill home to us, to 42 fakers, meaning to hide the hidden hand, okay? To have us focusing on the sparkly aspect of their history versus all of the atrocities that need to be highlighted. Not even for our sake alone, but for their children's sake too, because their children need to know the truth. Franklin developed a taste for the business and, after taking a brief break to fight in the War of 1812, dedicated himself to slave trading full time. It was all he did for the rest of his professional life, right up until he retired. Quote, his brothers never got back into the slave trade, but Isaac really decides this is going to be his game. He's good at it. He likes it. He can make money at it. He sticks with it, Rothman said. I find it so ironic that this dude's name is Isaac. Isaac, just like the father of Jacob, the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. Isaac is the father of Jacob, who then had his name changed to Israel and became known as the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. The 12 tribes of Israel, those young men of the 12 tribes, their grandfather was Isaac. And I find it very interesting how this European man has an Israelite name, an anglicized Israelite name, and he's enslaving Israelite people. Just another sign, if you ask me, of what would befall us after we fell away from the Most High's law, statutes, and commands and denied our heritage. So crucial not to deny yourself, because when you deny yourself, other people are willing to impose themselves onto you. So his brothers never got back into the slave trade, but Isaac really decides this is going to be his game. He's good at it. He likes it. He can make money at it. He sticks with it, Rothman said. Franklin worked with a few partners over the years, but connected with his longest lasting collaborator, the man who became his closest friend, confidant, and nephew by marriage in the early 1820s. At the time, John Armfield was lacking in purpose, shiftless and footloose. He had recently been chased away from a county in North Carolina for fathering a child out of wedlock, Rothman said. His path to the slave trade was less clear cut than Franklin's. Born in 1797 to lapsed Quakers who farmed several hundreds of acres in North Carolina and owned a small number of enslaved people, Armfield spent his early adulthood pursuing a variety of unsuccessful ventures, including a small mercantile shop, which he was forced to abandon after his affair. Though unsure what he wanted to do, Armfield was clear on what he didn't. He loathed farming. Oh, he loathed farming, but didn't loathe the idea of farming human beings and enslaving them. Okay? So, floundering about, quote unquote, in the wake of the sex scandal, Armfield decided he would just dabble in the slave trade, according to Rothman. Franklin and Armfield, I don't know how you dabble in the death and destruction of people. Okay, see how they use these words that don't seem so harmful? Innocent words like dabble, innocent words like dabble to the tune of billions of dollars. That don't sound like dabbling to me. That don't sound like no dabbling to me. That sounds like dipping. That sounds like a whole bunch of other D's that we not gonna get into. Just dabble in the slave trade, according to Rothman. Franklin and Armfield met a few years after that in the course of business and immediately developed a rapport, Rothman said, an intimacy that continued for decades and fueled their profitability. Y'all, I'm keep going, okay? And fueled their profit. Give me one moment. Let me move this window over. And thank y'all for just joining in. If you just joined in, Shabbat Shalom to you. All right. I'm reading from a Washington Post article. Okay, that was written. Let's go back to it. Written September 14th, 2019. I'll leave a link in the description. They were once America's cruelest, richest slave traders. Why does no one know their names? And this is in, of course, pertinence to what we're talking about tonight. The earth has been given into the hands of the wicked, and we have to understand why this happened. Okay? We have to understand why this happened, and we're gonna get it on this Shabbat. Franklin and Armfield met a few years later, after that in the course of business, and immediately developed a rapport, Rothman said, an intimacy that continued for decades and fueled their profitability. In 1834, the two men became family when Armfield married Franklin's niece. Quote, they are each other's closest friends, and that's rooted in their working relationship, Rothman said. Part of the reason they're successful is they worked well together. Each understands the other's strengths. They trust and respect each other. So let's see how they trust and respect each other. The two men launched the slave trading firm. I really am starting not to like that word firm. The two men launched the slave trading firm, Franklin and Armfield, and moved into the Alexandria townhouse, today a museum. Listen carefully, y'all. Not only have Israelite people in this country not received reparations, we've been attacked at every corner. And I'm not saying these things as a woe is me. Man, listen here. Let me say this before I speak. To anybody just joining that might think I'm a crybaby, I might think I'm trying to stir up the pot and won't leave well enough alone. Listen to me. I watch my get out here in that football field every Sunday, totally disregarding their bodies in order to entertain within a Roman Colosseum, bread and circus type mentality. I watch my brothers and my sisters run up and down a court with the names of their slave owners and a number every single week. Now, I'm not talking about me, I'm talking figuratively now because I don't watch sports like that no more. But I see thousands and thousands of our people, day in and day out, generation after generation, running up and down a court, using their prime up to entertain people who would rather them do that than to instill within their minds the truth so that they can use that prime energy in order to help liberate and free our people. I'm not with the bread and circus. In order to understand what's going on, though, it's nothing that we can do necessarily physically first that's going to liberate our people to the point that the Most High, that the Mashiach returns and cracks open that sky. But in the liberating of our people's minds, we will begin to see the importance of cleaving back to the law, statutes, and commands of the Most High. And that is what sets the stage for the final battle. That is what sets the stage for the final fight. Because the truth must go to the four corners of the world, and then the end will come. Okay? Now, I'm not sitting up here as no woe is me. That's why I always say you point one finger, you got three pointing back at you. But I'm also not with the hidden hand agenda. I'm also not going to sit up here and say, oh, well, just because my people seem to be blind right now, I guess I'm going to go ahead on and exploit them too. Like these pastors and priests do in these churches, knowing our people is blind. Knowing our people is being deceived at every nook and cranny, at every corner that we turn. They know this, and instead of using their platforms to deliver the truth to our people, what do? They sink us deeper and deeper into a quagmire, deeper and deeper into a hole of deceit. I personally have made the decision not to be a part of that. I hope that my personal decision is influential enough, inspiring enough for my brothers and my sisters who feel the same way to take up that same charge and mantle. But it is not of my own power for our brothers and sisters, my brothers and sisters, to do that. That's a calling that has to be instilled over them. It has to be decreed to them as part of their destiny. This is the truth of the matter. But in dealing with the truth of the matter, just like this Rothman said in his article, we're going to have to uncover many of the things that were hidden, and many of the things that are hidden are totally despicable. Many of the things that were hidden are so decrepit and so nasty that when you have to ask, who is the reason? What is the reason? What was the catalyst in regards to that despicable decrepitness that we are identifying as part of the truth? Someone has to take claim of it. Unfortunately, the people who have to take claim of it are expert and proficient in gaslighting and narcissism. Narcissists do not like to take accountability. Gaslighters want to say that your truth and what you know to be true is false and deny your perspective. And now we're dealing with generations upon generations of narcissistic energy, gaslighting energy, who seek to keep that hand hidden in order to contain a people's mindset and in order to control the narrative and in order to control people from rising up. But the real truth of the matter is, this truth is out of everyone's hands. Some days I sit up here and I question why I'm not out here chasing a big bag. Maybe because the dollar is an idea that's predicated off the bloodshed of my people. And I know we have to pay bills. But am I supposed to dedicate my entire life and being to chasing after money with none of my people's faces even on? That's a question I had to ask for myself. How come I didn't go on and chase that MMA career, or chase my professional boxing career, or get out there and use my height to slam dunk on somebody's head? I could still get up. I could still dunk. I'll be out there. I could still do my thing. How come I'm not using that for that? To entertain the masses? How come I'm not out here using my wit and my ability to articulate to get in front of thousands of people and be a comedian? Now, I know in comedy, we could use certain aspects of comedy to deliver messages and this and that, but I still be construed as a clown. Oh, maybe we can take what he's saying seriously, maybe not. How come I'm not using this knowledge to be a senator or a statesman or a mayor or a governor? I could. How come I'm not vouching and trying to be a presidential candidate? Well, partly, mainly because I'm a child of Israel. And my command that was given to me was to flee Babylon, to leave Babylon, to leave out the midst of Babylon, to leave the ways of Babylon alone, not to mingle with its society, not to mingle with its ways. So I'm kind of in between a rock and a hard place, huh? There's only so much that I can do, but that so much is powerful. Learning how to cultivate land, learning how to raise livestock and cattle again, identifying true wealth in the form of my family. Okay. Learning how to build up men and learning how to guide women in a correct way as my brothers and sisters, as my children, not my brothers and sisters being my children, but my actual children that come from my loins, teaching them how to be honest, how to be real, how to use their strength on behalf of the Most High. See, the things that are actual value to our people are the things that this society is afraid of. The things that are of actual value to our people are what our people consider not to be cool. Meanwhile, those who have been placed over us are using every industry, are using every day to the advantage of their kingdom. This ain't a woe was me at all. Oh, no, no, no. Because I had to look at myself and I had to decide what I was going to do about it. Okay. Just like you're going to have to decide what you have to do about it. But you have to realize that there's a history based off of the decisions that we make. And that history moving into the present is only going to be so valid. We could only use the excuse of history for so long before we begin to take action or we begin to go along to get along. I know one thing about the baby boomer generation. A lot of the baby boomer generation was the original Black Panthers. Once that crack cocaine hit our communities and we saw the onslaught of our people being imprisoned even at a greater rate, thrown back into the plantation, modern day plantations, That same spirit came over our mamas. Oh no, we got to raise our sons to be effeminate. We got to raise our sons to hold their heads down. We got to raise our sons and our daughters to go to college and get a degree from the same people who've oppressed us. Now, this isn't a dig on any of our people who've gone to college, but it could be a dig on our people who've gone to college and university if you haven't taken that knowledge, whatever you got, and figured out a way to leverage it as a catalyst for your people's sake. Hey, hey, we got to speak on it. Because these individuals who was talking about, Franklin and Armfield, they had the complexion of the protection of the collection. And they never felt guilty about what they did. And they died without feeling guilty about what they did. And they are celebrated by those who funded them and from those who enjoyed the fruits of their labor, even to this day, so much so that the very places where they housed or kept thousands and thousands of enslaved people is looked at as a monument, not in order to enlighten our people to the atrocities of that situation of slavery, because as the article stated, many of us, majority of us, don't even know these people existed. We never heard of these guys. So who is this monument for? It's for all of those who benefited from their actions. It's a celebration house. It's a light to their darkness. And it's not a healthy light. I hate to say that oxymoron, but it's something that is celebrated amongst their circles. And we're going to keep on bringing this out because this is the wickedness that the Most High is talking about. This is the wickedness that the earth has been given into the hands of. It is these sorts of people who died never feeling guilty about their heinous crimes against humanity, but who today, their children are now creating all sorts of laws and all sorts of bylaws and ordinances in order to continue target the victims of this heinous atrocity. Okay, while keeping the hand hidden and continuing in the actions of their forefathers even to this present day. See how crazy it is? So let's continue. The two men launched the slave trading firm Franklin and Armfield and moved into the Alexandria townhouse. Whew. Today a museum in 1828. From the beginning, they divvied the work according to each man's strength. Armfield, based in Virginia, managed the buying side of things. Also, now people are things. Okay? Listen to the English wording. Just rock with your eye on this. Listen to what's being said. Okay? And to all of the so-called white folks who tune in and tap in with me, I know that you have a heart to do good. We have a saying, if the shoe fit, wears it. Okay? If the shoe don't fit, be a part of the party that helps find who the shoe belongs to. Okay? All right? Armfield, based in Virginia, managed the so-called buying side of things and arranged transportation, Rothman said. Franklin, meanwhile, stayed mostly in Natchez, Mississippi, and was responsible for selling their human cargo to plantations in the Deep South. How many of y'all got family from Mississippi like me? How many of y'all got family from Mississippi? I'm a first generation Bay Area boy, which means my daddy ain't from the Bay Area. My daddy was born in Starkville, Mississippi. How many of y'all got family in Mississippi? How many of y'all got family from the dirty South? Hmm? I know I do. And you want to know something that's crazy? A lot of my family in Mississippi, their parents and grandparents came from Virginia. Ain't that funny? It ain't funny at all. But it goes to show the proof of this narrative and how so decompressed and hidden that those of us in this modern time who would want to do something about it don't get to hear about the story. So, like I said, this isn't to push buttons. I'm not sharing this to push buttons. I'm not doing this to trigger. If you're just joining this live stream, I have this saying, we have this saying in the land, oh, don't take me out my character. Don't allow, I'm not gonna allow you to take me out my character, as if to say, taking you out your character is gonna make you evil or angry or make you violent, right? And I had to say, wait a second, I don't like that saying, take me out my character. Because taking me out my character mean I was wearing a mask the whole time. So when you see me kind, when you see me generous, when you see me good, when you see me wanting to walk the righteous path, if I got took out of character to become evil and wicked and violent and disastrous, well, then I was wearing a mask the whole time. I said, no, 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 I want to live in truth. I don't want to put no mask on. I want to be righteous. I want to be upright. I want to live in a certain way where wickedness cannot affect me and knock me out of position, where those who are evil cannot press any old button they feel they can press in me and trigger me to be something I don't want to be. Okay? I need y'all to hear me out on that one. Listen and hear me. It worked like this. Back to the article. And thank you for everybody who's thumbed up this live stream. It worked like this. Relying on a network of headhunters spread across Virginia, Maryland, and the district, armed field would round up enslaved people, holding them in an open air pen behind the house in Alexandria, or sometimes in its crowded, filthy basement, until he'd amassed a sufficient number, usually between 100 and 200 people. So that means that people, more times than not, would have to be forced to live in decrepit conditions for only the Most High knows how long before this slave trader's numbers were suitable for them to be relocated. So that meant there were probably no toilets, there were probably no hygiene facilities, there was probably nothing there uh, in order to sustain our people in a manner that was some form of dignifying. And of course, we're not talking about a dignifying trade here. Okay, I'm gonna read some more. Relying on a network of headhunters spread across Virginia, Maryland, and the district, Armfield would round up enslaved people, holding them in an open air pen behind the house in Alexandria, like cattle, like animals. Holding them in an open air pen behind the house in Alexandria, or sometimes in its crowded, filthy basement, until he'd amassed a sufficient number, usually between 100 and 200. Then he'd send the group on an arduous 1,000-mile march to slave markets in Natchez or New Orleans. Or he'd stuff them into one of the company's three massive ships to make the same journey by water. At the peak of their business, the two men were moving roughly 1,000 people a year, historians said. They placed ads in local newspapers seeking enslaved people almost every single day they remained in business. They developed cruel stratagems to boost their bottom line. For example, they designated less space per person on their ships than the transatlantic slave trade vessels did, Schemmerhorn said. While enslaved people waited in Franklin and Armfield's holding pen in Alexandria, the two men most likely adopted classic techniques employed by slave traders via that famous Willie Lynch letter, right? To enhance enslaved people's sellability, McKinnon said. Sellability, okay? That meant feeding their captives large amounts. They finally said it, captives. We were prisoners of war. We were not born slaves. Do not ever teach your children that we were born slaves. We were never born slaves. We were free people who were captured and enslaved. That meant feeding their captives large amounts of corn pone and pork to fatten them up, dyeing gray hair black so they looked younger, and if an enslaved person's skin was scarred with whip marks, smearing wax into the wounds so they looked healthier, according to McKinnis. The whole thing was so evil, McKinnis said. Through it all, both regularly raped the women they bought and sold and joked about it in letters, a shared habit that deepened their friendship. Woo! So, y'all hear that? All of the exploits that they committed against our people, it didn't make them feel guilty. Instead, it deepened their friendship and their brotherhood. And it gave them a sense of power that men often crave, but it gave them a sense of power from such a wicked and dark perspective that it's hard to tell if their conscience was affected negatively by it. We know, though, that their conscience wasn't affected negatively by it because they joked about these things in their letters. Imagine joking about taking a man's wife from him and raping her in front of him and their children. Imagine joking about raping a man in front of his wife and his children. Yeah, I told you this was going to be tough, y'all. Oh, we've heard this story before, right? Well, not according to this article. According to this article, we've never heard this account. Do you know about Franklin and Armfield? I've never heard about a movie made about them. Do you know about this? I sure don't. Or are we just so far removed that we don't care about this anymore? We just want to go on to the club. We just want to go on and party. Just just drown out our sorrows. Mm-mm. Through it all, both regularly raped the women they bought and sold and joked about it in letters, and shared habit that deepened their friendship. Franklin and Armfield each fathered at least one child with an enslaved woman, Rothman said. He suspects the abuse, which had no financial purpose, stemmed from a desire for raw power. They did it because they could, and they felt like it. Just remember that sentiment. Just remember that. Because they weren't the only ones who did it because they felt like it and because they could. Okay? They weren't the only ones. Just listen. This is true wickedness. When Franklin wed a rich socialite in 1839, he had been raping the same enslaved woman for about 5 years and had fathered a child with her, Rothman said. Franklin sold the enslaved woman and her baby right after his wedding, I guess to recoup on wedding ceremony prices and costs, right? Or maybe he sold the woman as a favor to his new wife, who couldn't stand the thought of a beautiful Israelite woman being the object of his affection, if that's what you want to call it. There's no indication that these two felt guilty. One of the most persistent misconceptions about slavery in the United States is that the white upper class refused to associate with slave traders on principle, Rothman said. A myth the case of Franklin and Armfield disproves. In other words, the caste of higher elite whites and the slave trader sub elite and the paddle roller and slave catcher group oftentimes in history is presented in slave movies is separated and segregated as if they didn't have anything to do with one another. Instead, it was a well-cogged machine, a well-oiled machine. And each class had a place within society that helped and assisted the other class. Remember, the so-called African or the so-called indigenous or the so-called slave was not even seen as a human, but as cattle, okay, as property. So you must remember the context at which all groups were seen. Oh, yeah. If this is stirring it up, I'm knee deep in it and I'm cabbage patching off in it. Okay? Because we this truth. Even while actively trading slaves, the two men enjoyed an excellent reputation. So, you see right there, they weren't looked at as scourges amongst their own. They enjoyed a excellent reputation and moved in top-tier social circles, according to Rothman, just like your Jeffrey Epsteins and your Winkelsteins and Feinsteins and all of these today who are trafficking children, focusing on minority children, so called minority children, going to these Caribbean islands and stealing children away. Okay, listen carefully. Putting out Craigslist ads saying they need nannies and saying they need babysitters and then stealing these women away, never to be seen again. Okay. Even while actively trading slaves, the two men enjoyed an excellent reputation and moved in top tier social circles. According to Rothman, Franklin went to the theater with other rich whites and threw dinner parties, earning a reputation as a gregarious host with the best liquors, Rothman said. Now, these are words of a modern day man. And you see how he's talking about these people from the past? Gregarious and the best liquors. That's nothing that was an account that they said. This is what he is saying after the implications of these individuals' letters. Okay? Armfield may have been less extroverted, but he too drew accolades for his social graces. When visitors came to the Alexandria townhouse, he always opened the door for them, made elegant small talk, and offered them something nice to drink, McKenna said. He was so smooth. He managed to impress even a New England abolitionist who visited Alexandria in the 1830s. So, this is supposed to be an abolitionist, some from the North. This abolitionist is supposed to be angry with his counterparts, his contemporaries, his peers of his kinsmen who are enslaving people based off of their color, right? Based off of their ancestry, right? But we know that they are enslaving people based off of being the people of the book. But we touch on that as we go through this lesson. But the fact is, an abolitionist is supposed to be able to be hard nosed towards these acts, these heinous acts. And instead, this particular abolitionist wasn't worth his weight in spit. He was so smooth, he managed to impress even a New England abolitionist who visited Alexandria in the 1830s. The abolitionist, knowing full well Armfield's profession, nonetheless wrote, he is, quote, a man of fine personal appearance and of engaging and graceful manners. That kind of goes to my point today. And this might be race mongering, stirring up something, but I got a question for everybody who watches this. People who are inspired to leave a comment in the comment section, regardless of ethnicity, please do so. Do you think any of your so called white friends, if there was a race war that took place right now, white versus black, this is to the black folk, do you think any of your white friends would abandon their white side and kinsmen and join forces with you and fight against their own kind when all chips was on the table? Do you think? I'm hard pressed to say yes. I don't think so. I don't think so. And I don't want anybody to use the Civil War as an example of this because this wasn't a black versus white war. This was white on white war with so-called black men trying to get along, getting in to get along, to get a piece of something in order to look good in the eyes of the overseer. Okay. I'm talking about a truly so-called black versus white war. Do you think any of your white friends would help you in fighting against their white kinsmen? I don't think so. But you know what I do think? We've been so mentally destroyed as a people that we have black folk who is friends to white folk who would help white folk against black folk. I do think that. Because ever since we've been brought over here and destroyed, we've been pitted against each other, and you still got multiple of so-called black folk who have been indoctrinated with that type of mindset. We call them coons in our community today. People who are gatekeepers for the so-called white man in regards to their heinous acts and crimes and would be quick to fight against their own kinsman and their own brother if that meant an elevation in status within the so-called white man society. This is just the facts. Okay. But this abolitionist wrote, he is a man of fine personal appearance. And of engaging, graceful manners. Their good reputations persisted after retirement. Franklin and Armfield quit the business around 1837. Franklin, who was approaching his 50s, was, quote, tired and didn't want to do it anymore. Oh, didn't want to destroy lives and rip apart families and rape women and men and pedophile over children, right? And castrate and brand people, right? He didn't want to do that anymore. We know branding is a major part of corporate stance in this capitalist society. So he all of a sudden didn't want to do it anymore, but it's not because he didn't have a conscience. Rothman said Armfield had no wish to continue without his longtime partner. Franklin divided his retirement between a large mansion he built in Tennessee and several Louisiana plantations. Now, we know he didn't build that mansion. We know he kept a good old slave man for himself to build that mansion. Okay. Franklin divided his retirement between a large mansion, and I'm going to correct the article writer. He had his enslaved people build in Tennessee and several Louisiana plantations he acquired over the course of his career. He whiled away his final years managing his estates and spending time with his three children and wife, Adelicia Hayes, whom records indicate he adored. Franklin died in 1846 of intestinal issues. I guess his actions finally made him sick. But there's something to kind of celebrate with this. The article goes on to say that none of his children lived to the point where they were able to have children of their own. Not the white children, that is. None of them lived. So he never had what they would consider legitimate grandchildren. Okay? None of his children lived long enough to have children. Okay? Let's get it. Armfield, meanwhile, purchased an old hotel in the Tennessee mountains and converted it to a luxury summer getaway for the wealthy. He ran it with great success in his final years, great success, earning visits from very prominent people, including archbishops and the mayor of Nashville, according to Rothman. So you see, these archbishops and these mayors and these very prominent people are obviously not Israelite people. These are obviously not so called African, so called Black, so called indigenous people. These very prominent people are of his own ilk and kind. And none of these people who are very prominent ever sought to correct this man for the ills and atrocities committed against another people. And you have people today who say, well, that was just the way of the time. That was just what was accepted. That was the law back then. Well, because it's the law, don't make it right. Okay. Especially when it's not the law of the Most High. Okay. So, very prominent people, including archbishops and the mayor of Nashville, according to Rothman. Armfield's Hotel, which also still stands, is used to host events including Methodist retreats today. Are y'all hearing this? He died of old age in 1871. So both of these men ended up dying. My great grandfather, my paternal great grandfather, was actually born in 1871 in Mississippi. So none of these men died feeling guilty. None of these men felt like what they did was wrong. None of these men had a conscious awakening to what was happening. Now, Armfield, Armfield's marriage never yielded any children. So this Armfield, he never had children either. And Franklin's children, well, I shouldn't say neither. Armfield's marriage never yielded any children at all. But Franklin's children didn't grow to the point where they had children of their own. You would think their bloodlines would be done, right? But let me tell you what these slick willies did. And this is where I be having a problem. This is where I have an issue. They was raping these women, not just to dehumanize them, not just to belittle them, not just to embarrass our foremothers, not to diminish their value in the sight of our men that might want to die to protect them, but in order to pass that same wicked, nasty seed on through another generation. Okay? even at the expense of that seed looking like the very individual who they enslaved. Okay? This is just the facts. So Armfield's marriage never yielded any children, and Franklin's children with Hayes all died without producing offspring, according to Rothman. So the two men have no direct white descendants living today. Armfield, however, has at least one direct black descendant. Guess what his name is, y'all? Rodney Williams, who wrote about his heritage, which he said he discovered through DNA testing in an essay included in Slavery's Descendants, published in May. A group of Franklin's indirect white descendants, so Franklin has indirect white descendants, more likely from a sibling of his, learned of their relationship to the slave trader of a few years ago in 2018. And they donated money and relics to the Alexandria Museum located where their ancestors' so-called business once stood. So now you got Franklin, who has indirect white descendants, who find out about their ancestor, all of his atrocious ways, probably read their letters, probably read any books highlighting that um, that ancestry, and instead of decrying it, instead of getting out there and looking for the so-called black descendants of this individual, they took money and donated relics to the Alexandria Museum, which is not a museum at all, but a place of death and destruction, a place where thousands and thousands of people were held hostage as captives to be sold further into enslavement, to be separated from their families, their wives, their children. And you would think in 2018, I thought everybody should just get along. I thought everybody should just, do their best to work together. I thought everybody should do our best to heal. In 2018, you have indirect white descendants of Franklins who learned about the relationship to the slave trader, donating money and relics to help keep that nasty building standing, instead of taking a torch to it and burning it down to the ground. You see? That goes into my point that when it all said and done, those folks are going to stick together with themselves, even when they know they're wrong. Now, neither Franklin, and I'm about to read another point. Now, mind you, these are white writers who wrote this article, white historians who wrote these words that I'm reading, okay? And outside of my own narration of the article, these are people who have done due diligence, have access to records, letters, history, and are presenting this in a Washington Post article, okay? Neither Franklin nor Armfield earned recrimination, meaning chastisement from their peers during their lifetimes, and neither man felt the slightest remorse, according to their papers. Okay? So they were never sorry for what they did. Remember, these are the same men who joked about ripping families apart and raping innocent women. All women are innocent and don't deserve to be raped. Okay? But raping women and feeling a joy about it. It never occurs to them to think slavery might be bad. This is a quote. It never occurs to them to think slavery might be bad. Slavery is what made their society work. It made them rich. It was a given that that was what black people were for, Rothman said. And this Rothman, he's very slick with his wording. And just reading his wording, it's very hard to tell if he's celebrating these guys on the back end in secret. It never occurs to them to think slavery might be bad. Slavery is what made their society work. Slavery is what makes their society work all the way to this present day. Okay? Not their society. The society we all live in, this Babylonian society, is still ran off enslavement of people. It made them rich. It was a given that that was what black people were for. No, black people, so called black people, were not made for slavery. There's no indication anywhere in the record that they felt guilty over what they did. Rothman is one of a small handful now fighting to remember the two men who arguably served as the founding fathers of America's domestic slave trade. Anytime you hear founding fathers, that's a celebratory term that is distilled to people in order to highlight them in history and help them to stand apart and be remembered. Okay? Quote, there's no indication anywhere in the record that they felt guilty over what they did. Rothman is one of a small handful now fighting to remember the two men who arguably served as the founding fathers of America's domestic slave trade. He became interested in Franklin and Armfield after perceiving a relative paucity of books or articles about the duo. See, he got books and articles that we've never been privy to in order to do research. There are more atrocious crimes that these two have committed, but this author or this Rothman isn't speaking on them publicly. You see, he's going to write a book about it and then present that and make us have to pay for our own history and what happened to us. Okay. He became interested in Franklin and Armfield after perceiving a relative paucity of books or articles about the duo, what he called a gaping hole in all of the literature on the slave trade. It's been 6 years since Rothman began his research, crisscrossing the country to scour old documents such as property transactions in Louisiana, court cases in Mississippi, ship manifests in Alexandria. Sometimes he finds it difficult to keep going. He is loath to spend yet another day probing the dark activities and darker minds of Franklin and Armfield. Then he remembers why he wanted to write the book. Oh, he is writing a book. People are still talking about how the slave trade was marginal. Slave traders were these ostracized dirtbags, and slave holders only bought and sold people when they had to, Rothman said. Those kinds of stubborn myths, they need demolition. Okay? So we now know slave traders weren't ostracized, they were celebrated. We now know slaveholders didn't only buy and sell people when they had to, but the slaves were looked at as social status. The slaves helped elevate people to social status. And the more slaves the person had, the more they were seen as a dominant force in society. Okay? Okay? So that's the end of the article. I'll leave it in the description. But there's something else that we have to talk about now. After everything that was said and done, do you think the Most High didn't see this? Remember, the Most High lives in each one of the children of Israel. The children of the Most High are the children of Israel. This might be hard for people to grasp and understand, but this is why we read in the book of Psalm. This is why we read in the book of Psalm, verse 82, verse 6, I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. This is David speaking to the children of Israel through the Psalms. He is not speaking to the rest of the world. This is written to the children of Israel. I'm sorry to break it to you, but I'm happy to break it to you at the same time because we have gone too long without realizing who we are. We've gone too long feeling like we were nothing, when in fact we are everything in the eyes of the Most High. Second Ezra tells us that we were chastised not because we are to be destroyed at a later time, but because the Most High chastises those and punishes those whom he loves for a short while in order that we be corrected for eternity. Psalm chapter 82, verse 6 tells us, I have said, ye are gods, okay? And all of you are children of the Most High. So we know that we are children of the Most High. And no parent, no parent allows their child to be treated in a certain way without punishing those or attempting to punish those who have had a hand in the debilitating acts over that people or over that child. The book of Isaiah, chapter 14, verses 21 and 22 tell us, prepare slaughter for his children. Okay? We know that every time we've had an uprising, every time we've had a revolt, that more so than not, except for the people of Haiti, our people in Haiti, but even then, our people in Haiti are still dealing with the consequence of uprising against the French, in that billions of dollars are funneled away from Haiti every year to fill and line the coffers of the French government, when the people of Haiti should not be paying a single cent, and all of that money should stay within the government of Haiti. And it's so crazy how Haiti is right next to Dominican Republic, but Dominican Republic is thriving daily. But Haiti, with all of the resources and the richness of that island on that side, is not thriving due to the consequence that the European French government has placed over the people of Haiti for rising up and embarrassing Napoleon during the Haitian Revolution. Okay? Every time we saw a revolution in the United States on this territory, we have seen immediate consequences, and our people getting slaughtered, our people getting uh, replaced back onto the plantation, or our people getting imprisoned and then sold away and separated further from the kinsmen. The Most High sees all of this, and this is the part that your pastor and preacher ain't gonna really speak on. What I'm about to share right now. This is the part that's hard pill to swallow for many. Okay, let me take a swig real quick since we talking about something that could help the pill be swallowed. The book of Isaiah, chapter 14, verse 21 through 22 tells us, prepare slaughter for his children, for the iniquity of their fathers, that they do not rise nor possess the land, nor fill the face of the world with cities. For I will rise up against them, saith YAHUWAH of hosts, and cut off from Babylon the name and remnant and son and nephew, saith YAHUWAH. So, what's about to happen, and what everybody is worried about with this whole World War III and all of this type of stuff, what's about to happen is these countries, these Gentile countries, are getting ready to implode on themselves. They're getting ready to destroy themselves from within. Rome always fell from within. Babylon always fell from within. All of the nations of the world always decompose from within themselves. And this country is going to be no different. Prepare slaughter for his children. Why? For no reason? No, for the iniquity of their fathers. Those same people who abused, who raped, who misused, who mistreated, who maltreated, who disgustingly moved forward against our people, who enslaved us, who did all these atrocious things through chattel involvement, chattel slavery, who genocided a whole nations of people, they're the ones who were the fathers. Well, their children are going to have to pay for that. The same way we had to pay for the iniquities and sins of our foreparents and be cast into slavery is the same way that those who erroneously involve themselves in shadow slavery are going to have to pay for their sins and their transgressions against the children of the Most High. You see? The difference, however, is that the children of the wicked are going to have to be taken out to an extent that they do not rise nor possess the land nor fill the face of the world with cities any longer. This would be a possibility to happen because we know that once the great war of Armageddon takes place, the final battle of Armageddon, this whole civilization is going to be dismantled and destroyed, and the new kingdom of the Most High will be placed over top of it. So there is no way that their children will be able to build cities throughout the earth any longer because their kingdom will be destroyed. Okay? All praises to the Most High. The book of Isaiah, chapter 60, goes further into this, where we read this, starting at verse 1. Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of YAHUWAH is risen upon thee. For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people. Okay. But YAHUWAH shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. And the Gentiles shall come to thy light, and kings to the brightness of thy rising. You see, those Gentiles who know what's going on and who seek forgiveness, they're going to be the ones who come to our light as if moths to a flame. And the Gentiles shall come to thy light, and kings to the brightness of thy rising. Lift up thine eyes round about, and see, all they gather themselves together. They come to thee. Thy sons shall come from afar, thy daughters shall be nursed at thy side. Then thou shalt see and flow together, and thine heart shall fear and be enlarged, because the abundance of the sea shall be converted unto thee. The forces of the Gentiles shall come unto thee. So these are the individuals of the Gentile nations who are going to be spared from the destruction that their forefathers were the reason of. Okay, so there's going to be a destruction to this kingdom. Their forefathers are the catalyst to the reason why that destruction must take place. But those children, those descendants of those forefathers of their people who do not be destroyed is because they have seen the error of their ways and have sought for forgiveness. And they are getting ready to bow and to prostrate and to seek the forgiveness of the elect. Okay? This is what you don't hear in your church, however. Then thou shalt see and flow together, and thine heart shall fear and be enlarged, because the abundance of the sea shall be converted unto thee. The forces of the Gentiles shall come unto thee. The multitude of camels shall cover thee, the dromedaries of Midian and Ephah, and all from Sheba shall come. They shall bring gold and incense. Okay? They shall bring gold and incense, and they shall flow, and they shall show forth the praises of YAHUWAH. Now, you have to remember that when we hear of this narrative talking about Midian and Ephah, okay, these and who else do we have? We have Sheba, right? Midian is a son of Abraham and Keturah, okay? Now, Ephah is a son of Midian. So these are all Shemitic people, okay? These are all Shemitic people who are our cousins, who have been looking off from afar at what would befall the children of Israel, who just been shaking their heads at everything that's going on. And as we've been enslaved in this enslavement, our cousins who are Shemitic and who are Hebrew as well, and also children of Abraham, they have been watching, building wealth throughout the years. And that wealth is going to be dispensated to us. This is one of the reasons why we don't have to worry about reparations coming from this country, because everything in this country is going to be destroyed. And whatever reparation they can give us will be worthless. It is the reparations that we are going to receive outside of this country from our cousins and through the Most High that are going to matter the most. Okay. Now, the sons of Kedar. Kedar is the sons of Ishmael. Nabayoth is the son of Ishmael. And Ishmael is the son of Abraham. So as you hear these names, remember that. Okay. Remember that. Now, the multitudes of camels shall cover thee, the dromedaries of Midian and Ephah, and all from Sheba shall come. They shall bring gold and incense, and they shall show forth the praises of YAHUWAH. All the flocks of Kedar shall be gathered together unto thee. The rams of Nebaioth shall minister unto thee. They shall come up with acceptance on mine altar, and I will glorify the house of my glory. Who are these that fly as a cloud, and as the doves to their windows? The ships of Tarshish, these are the Gentiles. Surely the isles shall wait for me, and the ships of Tarshish first, to bring thy sons from far, their silver and their gold with them, unto the name of YAHUWAH thy God, and to the Holy One of Yasharah, because he hath glorified thee. You see, the Gentiles who are seeking to be forgiven for the atrocities of their forefathers, they're going to be bringing their wealth as well. And as their ships upon which many of the children of Israel will be gathered from the four winds of the world, from the four corners of the world, and return back to the place where we were originally exiled, which is the continent of Africa. Okay. So many of us are trying to figure out how we going to get back home. How we going to get there? I don't have two pennies to rub together. How am I supposed to get back home? It's going to, a way is about to be made for us, family. Okay. So keep this in mind as well. Keep this in mind as well. Give me one moment. Keep this in mind as well. Okay. Surely the isles shall wait for me, and the ships of Tarshish first, to bring thy sons from far, their silver and their gold with them, unto the name of YAHUWAH their God, thy God, and to the Holy One of Israel, because he hath glorified thee. And the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, and their kings shall minister unto you. For in my wrath I smote you, but in my favor have I had mercy on you. You see, the sons of the strangers, the sons of the Gentiles are the ones who are going to now build up the walls of the new kingdom. They're going to build up our walls and help fortify us in the places that we are returning to, the places of our inheritance. And it's their kings, the kings of the strangers, the kings of the Gentiles, that shall minister unto us, meaning you are the children of the Most High. You are the true Yahudim. You are the true Yasharalites. You are the true people of the book. The world lied to you. The world told you you were nothing. The world made you feel despicable. The world downtrodden you. The world oppressed you. The people of the world hated on you. The people of the world talked down to you. The people of the world felt they could control and manipulate you at every corner of your life. But we're here to tell you that you are the true people of the book. You are the chosen of the Most High. You are the jewels of the Most High. You are the gems of the Most High. You are those fine things to the Most High. And it's time for you to be returned to your establishment. It's time for you to be returned to your right and proper place. Okay? There will be many Gentiles who say this, but check this out. And it has to be their kings to say this because our people are now transforming and our minds are being renewed. Our people have believed a lie for so long that just an average Tom, Dick, and Harry saying this isn't going to mean anything. We're going to need to hear the Prince Charleses of the world, like he's ever going to say it. He ain't going to say it. But you know who will say it? His son, Harry. Harry will say it. Okay. So Harry becomes king and he says it, then people are going to take heed to that because he's married to that sister Meghan Markle. Okay. You don't think Harry don't know? That's why Harry done been kicked out. I always liked Harry, but Harry done got kicked out because he knows some things. He not willing to go along with the program. And it's other kings and princes of the world who will be elevated to kingship. You watch within the next years or so. And they are going to be the ones who say, hey, 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 I know what my forefathers did. I know what they did. Hey, I don't want to die. I don't want no problems. I don't want no smoke. You are the people of the book. We've known it our whole times. I've studied this my whole life. I just couldn't say anything at the time. But now I have to say something. Please spare me. And they're going to be saying that to us. Then our people will listen. No different than they listen to Kyrie and Kanye all of a sudden. Men of Israel have been preaching this truth since the 1700s. And only right now is it beginning to take hold and to take root, or actually see it's been taking root, but only now is it beginning to bust through the surface and grow at an exponential rate to the point where other people on earth, those who've always known, have no choice but to admit the truth, or those who've always known are fighting extra hard to keep the truth hidden, or those who've been saying the truth of the people who the truth pertains to are now waking up to the truth and beginning to really consider what is being said for themselves. Okay. And thy sons and the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee. For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee. You see, the Most High's wrath is what caused all of these other nations to feel what they felt toward us and what they still feel toward us today. It is the wrath of the Most High that they will use as an excuse as to why they treated us the way they did. It is the wrath of the Most High that they feel justified in doing what they did. Okay. But in my favor have I had mercy on thee. You see, we haven't been destroyed physically to the point of extinction. We haven't been utterly removed from off the face of the earth. We still are here. Our numbers are strong. We're still here. Okay. And that is the mercy of the Most High. The mercy of the Most High is revealing our transgression, revealing the reasons that we were put in this position. And now that those reasons are being revealed, that is a level of mercy that has been dispensated to us by the Most High. Verse 11 of Isaiah chapter 60 reads, therefore thy gates shall be open continually, they shall not be shut day nor night, that men may bring unto thee the forces of the Gentiles, and that their kings may be brought. You see, because who's going to help build up this nation? Who's the one that's going to be building up this nation? Everyone who is first in this society is going to be made last in the society to come. Everyone who is looked at as last and at the bottom of this society is going to be made to be the first and the top of the society to come. And there always has to be a hierarchy. The hierarchy to come is going to be working under the Most High, while the hierarchy here in this present kingdom is working under Satan. See, the world now has been given into the hand of the wicked. But the world to come, the nation to come, the society to come, the government to come is going to be given into the hand of the righteous. Okay? And just like how we see the world now, where there's a hierarchy, and as this world has been given into the hand of the wicked, there are so-called elite who rule this world under the wicked one's direction and authority. The world, the righteous, is going to have so-called elite, the Israel elite, if I may, who are going to be ruling under the hand of the righteous. Okay? So they mirror one another. Therefore thy gates shall be open continually, they shall not be shut day nor night, that men may bring unto thee the forces of the Gentiles, and that their kings may be brought. For the nation and kingdom that will not serve you shall perish. Yeah, those nations shall be utterly wasted. So you see, this is why the battle of Armageddon must take place, because all of those nations who are imploding within themselves right now, we're seeing it fester right now. There are going to be many of the nations who refuse to do what? Who refuse to bow down to us. Okay? Who refuse to bow down at the soles of the Israelites' feet. Who refuse to admit their forefathers' wrongdoings. Who refuse to take accountability. And you talking about bow down? Brother, what are you talking about? Don't say these things. Don't tell us that the other nations are going to bow down. I'm just now getting used to being called an Israelite. What are you talking about? People are going to have to bow down to us. Don't say that. You're going to start something. Brother, what are you talking about? Oh, it wasn't a problem. I just read a whole article to you. I just read a whole article to you about how these European slave owners caused our people to be dehumanized, raped, pillaged, bowed down, broken apart, families destroyed, men destroyed, women destroyed, children destroyed, mentally, physically, spiritually. I just read that. And all of those people were celebrated for what they did. So much so that their living descendants felt like they had to take some of their hard-earned money and donate money and relics to what they now call a museum for tourist attraction, when it was a pit of hell on earth for the people who had to experience the turmoilistic conditions day in and day out of that horrendous and horrible place. There are plantations all over the South and Eastern Shoreboard that are still standing to this day, that are being celebrated as such, receiving countless grants and donations to keep them up and running, minus the slave labor. There are plantations that are still up to this day where foolish black folk allow themselves to be hired out as actors and actresses to play enslaved people on the plantation in these so-called thriving tourist locations of the South. Cannot make this up. So you better believe if this is still happening right now in real time, that I should never be ostracized for reading "Thus says the Most High" out of the Holy Scriptures. It's just that your pastor, your preacher ain't gonna tell you this truth. He's not gonna tell you the real. He don't want you to rise up mentally and spiritually before the eventual physical rise up. He don't want to see that because he himself thrives off of the system and society that has been instituted and manufactured to keep us deaf, dumb, and blind as a people, as a whole. And he gets crumbs and tidbits as rewards to do so. So he don't want to lose that because he knows he's been living a lie and preaching lies, and he's going to have his punishment with all of those Gentile nations who do not seek forgiveness over the lies that was told and shared to the children of the Most High. Okay? For the nation and kingdom that will not serve you shall perish. Yeah, those nations shall be utterly wasted. The glory of Lebanon shall come unto thee. Okay? The glory of Lebanon shall come unto thee. The fir tree, the pine tree, and the box together to beautify the place of my sanctuary. And I will make the place of my feet glorious. This new kingdom is going to be so magnificent. It's going to be something like we've never seen. And you're going to be happy that you was an Israelite who repented. You're going to be happy that you was an Israelite who turned back to the law, statutes, and commands of the Most High. You're going to be happy that some brother, some sister told you who you was, and you had the chance to get your life right and take advantage of this mercy and grace given to the people of the Most High. You're going to be so happy about this. You're going to be so happy. And as a Gentile, you're going to be so happy that you finally learned the truth because you have inherited the lies of your fathers. You're going to be so happy to bow down. You're going to be so happy to be able to be in position to have that disastrous and nasty cloud of deceit lifted from off of you that you're going to want to bow down if that means your survival, if that means your children's survival, if that means being allowed to live in the new kingdom at any capacity. Because remember, in every kingdom, there has to be servants, there has to be people who work, there have to be people of industry, there have to be people in manufacture, there have to be all sorts of things in government. Then there have to be people who rule. But in order for people to rule, there have to be people underneath them to rule. Okay? I hope y'all are seeing this. Oh, brother, don't talk like that. Oh, brother, don't say that. No, it needs to be said because we're not going to just read the words of disastrous and devilish men. We're not going to sit up here and just read about people who thrilled themselves over the destruction of another people and lived and died without feeling an ounce of guilt. But instead, guess what? They passed that guilt on to their descendants, whether the descendants admit it or not. Okay? And those descendants are going to have to live with the sins of their forefathers. And part of the payment for those sins is going into servitude. Those who lead into captivity must go into captivity themselves. Thus says YAHUWAH Mashiach, thus says the word of the Most High. These aren't my words until they're my words. But all of the words that I speak are inspired by the word of the Most High and backed up and confirmed by what the scriptures tell us. Verse 13 of Isaiah chapter 60. The glory of Lebanon shall come unto thee, the fir tree, the pine tree, and the box together, to beautify the place of my sanctuary, and I will make the place of my feet glorious. The sons also of them that afflicted you shall come bending unto you, and all they that despise thee shall bow themselves down at the soles of your feet, and they shall call thee the city of YAHUWAH, the Zion of the Holy One of Yasharal of Israel. I'll read that again for the people in back who didn't hear. The sons also of them that afflicted thee. So everybody we read about in that article, all of their descendants, all of their children, okay, and their counterparts, their contemporaries, their peers, from the slave purchasers and sellers, all the way to the slave traders, all the way down to the patty rollers and the slave catchers. The sons also of them that afflicted thee shall come bending unto thee, and all they that despise thee shall bow themselves down at the soles of thy feet, and they shall call thee the city of YAHUWAH, the Zion of the Holy One of Israel. Whereas thou hast been forsaken and hated, so that no man went through thee, I will make thee an eternal excellency, a joy of many generations. You see, that's the favor of the Most High. Part of the favor of the Most High having mercy on us is that we will be made an eternal excellency, a joy of many generations, because we were not utterly destroyed. We were forsaken, we were hated. No man wanted to help us. No man wanted to allow us the opportunity to correct ourselves. And that correction wasn't for a man to make. That correction was for us to make. And that correction was initiated in us in this present time in order for us to receive the salvation eventually of the Most High, but forgiveness now. That's where repentance comes in. Verse 16 of Isaiah chapter 60. Thou shalt also suck the milk of the Gentiles, and shalt suck the breast of kings, and thou shalt know that I, YAHUWAH, am thy Savior and thy Redeemer, the mighty one of Jacob. For brass I will bring gold, and for iron I will bring silver, and for wood brass, and for stones iron. I will also make thy officers peace, and thine exactors righteousness. Violence shall no more be heard in the land, wasting nor destruction within your borders. But you shall be called, or you shalt call thy walls salvation and thy gates praise, because now we are going to be returned to the new kingdom. No more violence is going to exist because we will all be living in Torah. Now we're going to be living in the walls of our inheritance, and that will be our salvation, being taken from the captivity of being spread to the four corners of the world, ostracized, oppressed, all of the synonyms that go along with being enslaved as a people, the mental destruction, the physical and spiritual destruction, and being moved within the gates of our foundation, of our inheritance, the same land that was guaranteed and granted to our forefathers before we fell away out of the land. Violence shall no more be heard in your land, wasting nor destruction within your borders. But thou shalt call thy walls salvation, and thy gates praise. Now we're going to be able to live peacefully in our lands again. Now our gates will be continually open because no one will be seeking to siege and to encroach on the territories that we were placed within. Okay? That's why the Most High just told us in verse 11 of Isaiah 60, therefore thy gates, okay, shall be open continually. Also, our gates shall be open continually because the forces of the Gentiles will be brought into our gates to pay obeisance to us, to serve and to bow down before us. We were forsaken, we were hated, but we will be made an eternal excellency, a joy of many generations. Verse 14 again. The sons also of them that afflicted you shall come bending unto you, and all they that despised you shall bow themselves down at the soles of your feet, and they shall call thee the city of YAHUWAH, the Zion of the Holy One of Israel. Verse 19, fast forward, Isaiah chapter 60, verse 19. The sun shall be no more thy light by day, neither for brightness shall the moon give light unto you. But YAHUWAH shall be unto thee an everlasting light, and thy God thy glory. The sun shall no more go down, neither shall thy moon withdraw itself, for YAHUWAH shall be thine everlasting light, and the days of thy mourning shall be ended. See that English word morning? When I started off this live stream, I said you got to be careful with the English language. How can the sun come back around and we call that morning when it's a glorious day? Another opportunity to repent, another opportunity to live within the purpose that the Most High has decreed to you. That is not a time of mourning. That is a time of gladness when the sun comes back around. That's why we say great rising. We leave good mourning alone because there's nothing good about mourning. Mourning is to heal and to filter out sad emotions, but we shouldn't stay in a mind frame and mindset of mourning, okay? Because mourning, once we get into the kingdom of the Most High and we are renewed to our establishment and to our state as the children of Israel, rightfully so, The days of mourning will be ended. No more crying, no more languishing, no more sadness, no more despair. Okay? Verse 21 of Isaiah chapter 60 goes on to read, thy people also shall be all righteous. Come on. Come on. Your people also shall be all righteous. No more are we going to be depraved. No more are we going to be downtrodden. No more are we going to be depressed. No more are we going to have a hateful eye toward our brother and our sister. No more are we going to do the Saniqua Jenkins or the sister that was down, excuse me, I said her name wrong. But the sister that's down there in Mexico that got killed by her so-called friends. No longer are we going to see any of that. Thy people also shall be all righteous. They shall inherit the land forever, the branch of my planting, the work of my hands, that I may be glorified. Who is the work of the Most High's hands? The children of Israel. Who is the branch of his planting? The children of Israel. Who is thy people shall be righteous? The children of Israel. Why? So that I can be glorified? So that you can be glorified? So that we can be glorified? No, so that the Most High can be glorified. A little one shall become 1,000, and a small one a strong nation. I, YAHUWAH, will hasten it in his time. Now our people are going to be restored. And not only are we going to be restored with having all these little babies, but all the babies is going to be righteous now. Now we're not going to be having demon children. No one's going to be on demon time. These babies are going to be righteous and living correctly in the eyes of the Most High. Okay? Oh, what a beautiful time. Now we're going to close this lesson out with a few more scriptures about who we are supposed to be in the eyes of the Most High. Because we're not giving up, we're not giving in. We were born champions, we were made to win. We already read Isaiah 61, verse 6, but we're going to read it again. But you will be called the priest of YAHUWAH. See, when it's all said and done, family, we're going to be called exactly who we were supposed to be called at the very beginning. But you will be called the priest of YAHUWAH. You will be spoken of as ministers of our God. You will eat the wealth of nations, and in their riches you will boast. That's our reparations. We too busy trying to get reparations from the United States when all the governments of the world were in league with one another as far as our enslavement and destruction went. They all collaborated together. They were in collaboration with one another. Getting reparations from one country ain't gonna do it. If this country owes us trillions of dollars, I want you to really think about this. We spend $1.6 trillion annually. I need you to think about this. As so-called black people in this country, as of 2021, we spent 1.6 trillion with a T, $1.6 trillion annually. That means every year. That's just in this country. We're owed trillions of dollars just from this country alone. The children of Israel, though, are owed money from France, Germany, Dutchland, owed money from Portugal, owed money from England, Britain, Ireland, Russia. Well, Russia didn't have anything to do with the transatlantic slave trade, technically speaking. The Arabs, who are supposed to be our cousins, owe us trillions of dollars. The East Indian people, a lot of them, unfortunately, we talk about the Siddhi people. The Siddhi people in West East India, the downtrodden of the caste, the deeper melanated your complexion in India, the lower on the totem pole you are seen. So I'm not talking about all of our East Indian brothers and sisters. Don't get me twisted at all. Okay? I'm not talking about everybody in East India. You have to use discernment. So many countries owe us reparations. The peoples of Africa who were in league against us that helped round us and sell us up will also owe us reparations. Those of the Hamitic people, because we even know some Shemitic people were involved with our enslavement, i.e., the Arabs. Okay? The wealth of the nations will be ours to eat. It'll be zillions of dollars. Zillions, not trillions, zillions. And in their riches you will boast. Oh, yes, we're going to brag and boast this time. You thought we were stunting and flexing on y'all now? You thought we were stunting and flexing after getting $250,000 from the record company to hate on our brothers and sisters? Wait till we get the wealth of the nations. Isaiah chapter 66, verse 21. I will also take some of them for priests and for Levites, says YAHUWAH. We're going to be returned back to our proper estate. All the sons of Levi spread through the four corners of the world, get ready. You're going to be priests again in the righteous way. You're going to be priests again, and it's going to be honored as such. Revelation 1, verse 6. And he has made us to be a kingdom, priest to his God and Father. To him be the glory and the dominion forever and ever. Amen. Amen. See, we're going to be returned as a kingdom. And when it happens, we will be ruling alongside Yahshua HaMashiach as the priest of that new kingdom to come, and righteousness will pervade throughout all of the land forever and ever. Revelation chapter 5, verse 10. You have made them to be a kingdom and priests to our God, and they will reign upon the earth. Let me say that again for the people in the back who are doubting what's being brought out of the word today. You have made them to be a kingdom and priests to our God, and they will reign upon the earth. Who will reign upon the earth? Everybody who was considered last on the earth in this society right now. All of the children of Israel who were downtrodden, oppressed, killed, genocided, destroyed mentally, physically, spiritually, raped, placed into bondage, lynched, torn apart by horse rein, chopped off at the limb, castrated, sold away, kidnapped, all for it to be done over and over again. You have made them to be a kingdom and priests to our God, and they will reign upon the earth. They will reign upon the earth. That means rule upon the earth. This is future. This is future context too, for those of you who are doubting or might say, oh, this has already happened. No, this hasn't. I read that from the red letter in the Revelation, book of Revelation, chapter 5, verse 10. Exodus chapter 19, verse 6. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the sons of Israel. See, Moshe was to deliver a message to us back in the wilderness. The message was, we are a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, a set apart nation, a nation not to be like the others, a nation that is to be different, a nation that is to stand apart, a nation that is to stand out. We've always been a peculiar people, a strange people to the nations, because the Gentiles' ways are not strange amongst themselves. It is only to when you have a group of people, a nation of people who stand outside of what is considered to be the norm, that they become strange. Outside of what is accepted, that they become strange. And that's why we have been targeted the way we have. It's easy to receive the law, statutes, and commands of the Most High, live in them for a certain amount of time, then fall away from them, and then in falling away, be identified as the people who did such. No other group of people can stake claim to this history and to this lineage and to this legacy. And it's okay. This is why we have to continue to long suffer and endure through these times and look toward the Most High as children of Israel. Yes, it's that serious. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9. But you are a chosen race. See, there's many races of people on this earth. I know today we live in a society of people say, oh, no, we're all one race. We're the human race. But that isn't how it was. Since the beginning of time, there have been kinds. From the animal plant kingdom to the animal kingdom, all the way to the human kingdom, there have been kinds. And we are a chosen race, talking about the Hebrew Israelite people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for God's own possession. This is why Yahshua had to go into the pit to lead captivity captive. I thought if captivity was led out of captivity, how are they made captive again? Oh, that's a great mystery when you don't know the truth. When you know the truth that the children of Israel are the possession of the Most High, we are captive, made captives again, being possessed by the Most High power of Israel. Okay? We are a people for God's own possession. We are the Most High's inheritance out of all the nations on the earth. so that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who has called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. This is why it must be said like this, because there will be a people who is taken out of darkness and brought into the marvelous light of the Most High. And you see it right before your face now. You see it happening all over the world. All praises to the Most High. Hallelujah. YAHUWAH. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 5. You also, as living stones, are being built up as a spiritual house for a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Yahuwah HaMashiach. Those spiritual stones are in similarity to the stones that we read in the book of Isaiah chapter 60, verse 17. And for wood, brass, and for stones, iron. No longer will we be downtrodden, but like iron, we will be made to stand strong in the marvelous light of the Most High. And those stones will be used. We will be like living stones built up for a spiritual house. That spiritual house is the ever reigning house of YAHUWAH through the children of Israel. Revelation chapter 20, verse 6. Blessed and holy is the one who has a part in the first resurrection. Over these, the second death has no power, but they will be priests of God and of Hamashiach and will reign with him for 1,000 years. Romans chapter 15, verse 16. To be a minister of Hamashiach Yahushua to the Gentiles, ministering as a priest the gospel of God, so that my offering of the Gentiles may become acceptable, sanctified by the Holy Spirit. What is this offering of the Gentiles? Well, we just read about it. And thy sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, and thy kings and their kings shall minister unto thee. For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee. Therefore thy gates shall be open continually. They shall not be shut day nor night, that men may bring unto thee the forces of the Gentiles, and that their kings may be brought. Okay. The sons also of them that afflicted thee shall come bending unto thee, and all they that despise thee shall bow themselves down at the soles of thy feet, and they shall call thee the city of YAHUWAH, the Zion of the Holy One of Israel. You see, this is the offering of the Gentiles, and that it may become acceptable, sanctified by the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh. The only ones that are going to be acceptable out of the Gentile people are the ones of the Gentiles who bow down, who seek forgiveness for the atrocities and iniquity of their forefathers against the children of Israel in the sight of the Most High. Okay. Exodus chapter 19, verse 6. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Did I already read that? If I did, we going to read it again. I showed it, but we going to read it again. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the sons of Israel. Well, my brethren, the sons of Israel, as am I, we have spoken these words to you, and I hope that you speak these words to our brethren abroad as you continue to move forward day to day. Oh, hello, my name is. I think it's too late. Too much damage has been done. No, Queen Sister, too much damage has not been done. Just enough damage has been done. You see, and the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee. For in my wrath I smote thee. See, that was the damage right there. That was the perceived destruction right there. But the Most High tells us, in my favor have I had mercy on thee. Okay. Verse 15 of Isaiah chapter 60, whereas thou hast been forsaken and hated. That's the damage that has been done. That's the hatred that we felt, the destruction we felt, having to endure watching our mothers being raped in front of us, our fathers being lynched in front of us, our children being snatched away from us. That is the forsaken energy that we felt. That is the hatred that we felt. So that no man went through thee, meaning no man sought to redeem us. No man on the earth sought to correct the actions of their people in pertinence to how we were being treated. I will make thee an eternal excellency, though, says the Most High, a joy of many generations. You see? So keep faith, sister. Keep faith. Keep faith. Do not give up. You know the words. What do we say? We would not give up. We would not give in. We were born champions. We were made to win, right? So keep the faith. Do not give up. But we've come on to the 3-hour mark, family, on this Shabbat. I pray that this lesson was edifying. I pray that you learned something today from a perspective that we haven't always been privy to in regards to the social elite and to regards to those who have capitalized off of our people's enslavement. I pray that those of you who are the descendants of those who enslaved my people are able to come to some sort of spiritual resolution within your mind and your heart and are able to do the opposite of what those descendants of those slaveholders did by donating and sending relics into the slave dungeons in order to keep them standing and to keep them up. Okay? You would think that the Tiki Torch crew, that the Tiki Torch troop would march down into Virginia and destroy all of those relics and destroy those slave dungeons in support of the children of Israel, in support of those who had been enslaved. But no, they want to keep them standing. And that is why this society must be destroyed. That is why the society must crumble. That is why the society is on its way out. And anybody, so-called black or so-called white, who wants to cleave to this society is erroneous for doing so. And unfortunately, those people who want to cleave to this society are going to be destroyed with it. See, I know some folks, y'all don't really know me. Y'all don't know me. Y'all see me on this screen when I'm talking, and for whatever reasons of the Most High, you was led to this channel, and I'm grateful for that. But one thing you got to remember, especially all the new supporters, is that I'm not here to tickle your ears. I'm not here to whisper sweet nothings into you. I'm not here to lie to you and deceive you purposefully. If something should be a misinformation or a misinformative that comes from me, it's my job to identify it once I'm led to it and then to remediate that statement and to fix it and to let you know that, oh, family, I made a mistake. Here's the correct thing that he said. Okay. But it's not my job to guide you into the pit. It's my job to help steer you away from the pit. It's my job to use my life as an example of the light on what we need to do in this last day of the last day in order to get our minds right, in order to get thinking right, in order to establish ourselves in a favorable position in the eyes of the Most High. So I know what I say ain't the popular thing. I know what I say. You tap into it. You're like, dang, this brother still talking like this. He ain't talking about Steph Curry in the game. He ain't talking about this. Why he ain't talking about Meg the Stallion and Tory Lanez? Why he ain't talking about Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg? Why he ain't talking about Jay-Z? I wish you would talk about something I care about in the world. Well, that's tickling your ear. That's using this platform and this gift for this moment and this day and this breath that's been put in me for right now to do something to make you feel comfortable. I'm not here to make you feel comfortable. I'm here to stir you up. I'm here to get you to recognize what's going on, both so-called black and so-called white and so-called everybody in between. That's my job. My job is to be a watchman. The scriptures tell us that the watchman ain't gonna be taken off by that thief that come like by that thief that come in the night. You know, they say the end is like a thief in the night. Well, not to the watchman. The watchmen of the Most High see what's going on, and it's our job to cry aloud and spare not. Meaning, don't spare your emotions. I'm not supposed to sit up here and care about how you feel about something. Hey, life's tough. Get a helmet. You gonna get it eventually. If it's meant for you, you gonna get the truth in many different ways. And what might seem hard right now, coming from my words, coming through me to you, it can lighten up a little bit later on. But that blood would be on my hand if you didn't get the message right now. I'm a papa now. Y'all, I never thought I would make it to 37 years old. I never thought I would be a daddy. I never thought I would be a husband. I never thought I would be off my block. Millersville, Central Vallejo, California. I never thought I would be here. Y'all got to understand. I never thought I would be where I am today. All I could do was dream and hope. I believe I could fly. That's all I could do. I don't know if y'all really get the motivation of why I'm before y'all in this capacity and not in the capacity of something else. I love y'all. What does love mean? Love me, love my brother as I love myself. If I know I was in a position of blindness, if I was in a position of downtroddenness, if I was in a position of pain, if I was in a position of mental and physical and spiritual destruction, and I've been brought out of that, I want to share that good news with my family. I don't want to see my brother have to be in the same place as me because I know what it's like. We all in the same boat, and we got different positions on the boat, rowing and rowing and rowing and rowing. And they say misery love company. Well, I don't want to be miserable no more. I don't want to be miserable. And the only way for me to not be miserable is for me to identify what was causing me to be miserable and to stand away from it. And it took a long time because my eyes was blind to it. So if I could do something to help my brothers and my sisters and those who want to seek the truth, eyes be open, why am I going to sit up here and waste another second not doing what it takes to help open the eyes of the blind? Okay? So you got to understand my motivation. Understand what's getting me to move this way. I know the risk of saying these things. I know the risk of not having supporters and subscribers and all of this. I know that because I'm not saying the thing to tickle your ear. I'm not trying to throw you off. I'm not trying to lead you astray. I'm not trying to say things that you like so I could pass a collection plate around. That's not what I was put here for. Okay? So listen, we had a beautiful lesson today. Y'all, I'm working on some things behind the scenes right now. Most high, most high, mama, papa willing. I reveal those things pretty soon. I'm gonna do a couple polls on the channel. I'm gonna do a couple polls soon and see what people think, test the temperature out a little bit, see who's interested in what, see who's not interested in what. But I appreciate all of y'all's participation nonetheless. Um, on this Shabbat, on this Shabbat, I think what I'll do in the description for this video is I'll leave some of the lesson plan for y'all if it doesn't take up too much space on the actual description. And I will leave those scriptural references as well as the link to today's article so that you can read this yourself and so that you can get more in tune with what's going on and that you can make a honest assertion as to how you want to move forward. All right, with the truth. But look, I love y'all to life always. This your brother Chu tapping in with you the only way I know how. Raw, real, and uncut. Remember to stay vigilant, stay blessed, stay vigilant. May you be a blessing to those whom you meet. May those whom you meet be a blessing to you. May goodness flow through you and to you. May you receive the goodness of this realm and the goodness of the realm to come. May a divine hedge of protection be around you and your family always. May your prayers be heard and may the Most High tilt his ear to your requests and your desires and hopes that those requests and desires are in alignment with the divine will that comes from the Most High. Listen, thank y'all for y'all time today. I'll tap in with you soon, Most High Mama Papa willing. Until then, gone.